It is finally here, the beginning of the Darkest Hour storyline in the comics with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 111, and I'm really freaking excited to talk about this issue from start to finish. Is freaking fantastic. With Dark Spectre here, ready to conquer the universe, now that the Morphin Grid has taken over, we are in for one hell of a ride, and I couldn't be any more excited to see what Melissa is going to bring with this story arc, with this comic event. So, without any further ado, let's talk about Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 111 with this recap, review, whatever you want to call it. Let's talk about it. So, the issue opens up with a flashback where we see Matt training during his early Green Ranger days, and he hasn't got it quite down yet, and he believes that he isn't fit for the job because he doesn't have 40 black belts, and he's not some kind of elite specialist that was trained in military experts. But Grace reassures him that he wasn't chosen because of his skills. He was chosen because of his heart. She then goes on to tell him that when she was a ranger back in the day, she got almost her entire team killed. And she then goes on to tell Matt saying, hey, this stuff is real and you have every right to be scared because you're going to screw up, you're going to lose, you're going to fail, that's a guarantee. And sometimes people will get hurt and you'll think it's your fault. But when the world seems like it's in its darkest moments, that's what makes you a ranger. So I really like this dynamic between Grace and Matt, having this mentorship between them, because Grace, as we've seen her, has been nothing but shoot first, ask questions later. So to have her see this heart-to-heart with Matt was a really nice moment, because when you turn the page, things take a drastic turn. We then cut to the present day where we see Matt standing over the body of a lifeless Grace Sterling. And as the other Rangers look in shock at what's going on, the one who takes this news the hardest is none other than Billy. And Billy asks Matt, is she alive? Is she dead? And Billy doesn't even get an answer. Matt is just shocked at what's just happened right now, at the actions he's done. And in a fit of rage, we see Billy attack Matt. Now, Billy has always been level-headed. He's a smart one. He's got a plan within a plan. He's the logical thinking one. In this issue, we see Billy attack in a fit of rage, anger, and frustration about what's just happened. And I can understand why. Grace was a very important person to him, but this is a different side of Billy we've never seen before. Now, while this is going on, you've got Mistress Vile gloating about her achievement and how Dark Spectre is coming into this world, and you've got the Vessel watching in shock at everything that's happening right now. After that, we then cut to Safe Haven where we follow the Omega Rangers, and things aren't looking good for them. You've got Keva facing off with Lord Zed in his new Serpentera Zord, but Lord Zed is quick to dip and get the hell out of there because, you know, Rita's not here. If he can't find Rita, then what's the point of being here? So he heads off to go find her, which is something that was really cool last time where he just came in the wreck shit and Rita wasn't even here. So Lord Zed just dips. After that, we then follow Zach and Trini as they're facing off against Dane and the Death Ranger, and they're slowly being cornered by these two villains, and things aren't looking good for them, because you've got Trini trying to get in contact with Billy, but Billy ain't picking up the phone because he's too busy throwing hands with Matt. So Zach is unable to fight off Dane and he's quickly subdued by him. And then you've got the Death Ranger where he says, I'm going to welcome you back into the hive mind, but Trini is quick to intercept. But like I said, they're not able to fight off these villains as they're too much for them. So while this is going on, you've got Alpha One in front of the archery says, I'll make sure that both archers are ours. And then after that, you cut back to the triangle where you've got all the Rangers fighting off Matt with everything going on. And Kimberly looks at Grace's body and it's got this black, surge of lightning around it that we've seen before. And you see a gasp, and we don't follow up on that with everything going on. So it might hint at that she's alive or something else is going on, but we don't get a follow-up on that. So Grace could be dead, Grace could not be dead, but a lot of people are thinking that she's dead. So we've got the fight between Billy and Matt going on, and Billy is just going ham against Matt. Like, he is throwing his freaking Triceratops lance against him. Matt's barely able to fight him off, and then Tommy has to intervene, and he's able to knock down Matt, and Tommy begs Matt to stop. He's like, please, dude, you don't have to do this. And Matt's just looking at him, crying to Tommy, saying, do it, kill me. And Billy says, did you kill her? And not even getting a second answer from him, he's willing to like throw hands with him again. And you've got Rocky and Adam holding him back, trying to tell him to relax. And Tommy's like, hey, Billy, stop it. And Billy's like, relax, are you kidding me? And Tommy's like, we don't know what happened. And Billy says, what do you think happened, Tommy? So, like I said, we've got a different Billy who is coming to the worst possible conclusions, not thinking things logically, and like I said, just acting in a fit of rage and anger at losing Grace Sterling. And I can understand where he's coming from, but to see Billy wanting to kick the crap out of Matt, like, we've never seen Billy act in rage before. We've never seen him act like this before. And this is a different side of the character we've never seen before, which is great to see. After that, we then cut back to Safe Haven, and things aren't looking good for Zack and Trini as they're pinned up against the wall and outnumbered as Dane, the Death Ranger, and the Wild Force Rangers have them cornered. While this is going on, you've got the portal of the Master Arch opening up, and Alpha One thinks that it's Mistress File, but it isn't. It's none other than the Draken Rangers here to save the day. And as they jump out of the portal, Draken asks if they've missed out on all the fun, and it looks like they haven't. So it's cool to see the Draken Rangers show up this early into the story arc, because I thought they'd show up in like maybe the next issue or so, but they're here, and I'm excited to see the dynamic between Draken and the Omega Rangers throughout this run, because we've got Kia as well, but not only that, we've got the World of the Coinless here as well. So it's great to see these characters interacting in this world again, because last time we had the Mighty Morphin team go into the World of the Coinless. Now we've got the World of the Coinless coming into this timeline to see what's going on. So this is really great to see, but not only that, I'm hoping we get to see some great character dynamics between everything and everyone going on right now. So the Draken Rangers are here. Okay, so this is where things get crazy. These last few pages is where shit hits the fan. So while this is going on in the triangle, you've got Kimberly and Daisha trying to break through the force field to stop Mistress Vile from completing the ritual. You've got Billy trying to kill Matt, and Matt just kicks Tommy out of the way and runs to Mistress Vile and says, I'm sorry, I'm weak. And Rita says, hey, we can still find some use for you. Don't worry. And suddenly, she lifts him up and says to the Rangers, I'll give you a choice. You can save the universe or save your friend. And while this is going on, Kimberly's like, Tommy, she's gonna kill him. And Tommy jumps in and says, let's go together. So they're ready to fight Rita and save Matt. But while this is going on, you've got the Vessel watching in shock at everything going on. And you see him reach for his weapon. And it honestly looks like that he's going to make the choice to sort of end this by killing Rita, by thinking, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't want this. And it almost looked like that he was going to stab Rita in the back while this was going on. But before he can make his choice, he's suddenly possessed by Dark Spectre. He goes red, and the giant aura surrounds him. But while this is going on, you see the grid get infected, and it happens from across several timelines as everyone is witnessing what is going on. You've got the Omega Rangers, the Mighty Morphin team, Matt. You see the World of the Coinless here. And then on the next page, it expands even further as you see the Morphonaut, SPD, RPM, and Samurai. So it looks like we've got another Shattered Grid situation where several universes or several timelines might be involved, and for these teams to get involved, I'm really excited. Like, we've got the Morphonaut, he played a big role with Dark Spectre and Universe. SPD would be great to see again. RPM would be great to see. Samurai, of course, they played a big role in Shattered Grid, well, Lauren did. But looking at this Samurai team, it looks like it is Jaden. Possibly, it might be Lauren, I'm not sure, it's hard to tell with the angle that we see the Red Ranger on. But on the final page, it looks like the rubble is clear, and we only see Rocky and Adam as they wonder where everyone's gone. But we then hear a voice, and it's the vessel possessed by Dark Spectre, saying that this body is powerful, and this world belongs to him now. And then you've got Mistress Vile, Rita, whatever you want to call her, kneeling down by saying, Dark Spectre, welcome home. And then it ends with to be continued. Okay, so last month in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, we began the Darkest Hour story event, the Darkest Hour arc, if you want to call it, and a lot went down in that one issue. We had the death of Grace Sterling, we had the Draken Rangers show up, and of course we had the big thing going on, that being Dark Spectre being summoned into the real world and infecting the Morphin Grid. And this issue picks up where that cliffhanger left off on, but not only that, it's sort of the fallout on everything going on, as the characters try to group up and figure out what the hell is going on. But not only that, the final page has the most craziest cliffhanger that I was not expecting with this issue. Items that we saw all the way back in Season 1 are brought back into the storyline and are going to be playing a role within Darkest Hour. And we'll get to them when we get to them near the end of the video, because there's a lot I want to discuss with those items being brought back in the Darkest Hour storyline, because I know that we're celebrating 30 years of Power Rangers, but I was not expecting Melissa to pull that deep from the Power Rangers lore and history. But Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 112, with this issue we follow two different parties. We follow Billy and Grace Sterling, or sort of Grace Sterling in quotation marks. We'll get to it when we get to it. But we also follow the Omega Rangers being Zach and Trini, but also some Mighty Morphin Rangers being Kimberly, Tommy, Aisha, and Matt, of course. So what I'm going to be doing with this video is, because we're following two different parties, I'm going to talk about the Grace and Billy stuff first. Then I'm going to talk about the Omegas and the Mighty Morphin team and their adventures. And then I'm going to round it up and talk about the final couple of pages with that big cliffhanger, with that big ending, and give my thoughts on the issue at the end, but also sort of recapping, reviewing, and analyzing the issue as we go along, because there's a lot to talk about with this issue and go over it. So, without any further ado, let's talk about Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 112 as we continue the Darkest Hour storyline. Now, this issue opens up with Billy waking up in some strange void, and he's greeted by none other than Grace Sterling. Now, I know what you're thinking, Grace Sterling, is she alive? Is she dead? Well, she's definitely dead. This issue confirms that she died last month, but Grace Sterling being Grace Sterling, having a plan within a plan, a backup plan within a backup plan, tricks up her sleeve, had something up her sleeve, of course, and that's what I love about Grace Sterling. She's always got something planned up her sleeve if something goes south. So we find out that Billy is talking to a program that Grace Sterling built if something was to happen to her. And Grace Sterling says that when the Master Arch was built, she built a trigger within it and tied it to a transmitter within her brain. So this transmitter was connected to the grid, and if something was to happen, well, it would separate everyone to make sure they're safe. So Grace Sterling had something up her sleeve if like this was to happen. And like I said, that's what I like about the character. But Grace Sterling, the whole reason why she did this is because death isn't inevitable, she says. People are going to die no matter what, but information, that can live on forever. So the whole reason why she's got this program is that way Grace Sterling's information, her research, that can live on forever. So she's got this Grace Sterling sort of system within her brain that she's got within the Morphin Grid that's going to live on forever with all this information that she's discovered. But I do like how Grace Sterling will sort of like it. Well, Grace Sterling, she's very somber about with everything that happened, saying that her death was meant to happen eventually. And it was probably sealed when Mistress Vile broke into Promethea, or when she decided to rebuild the Master Arch, or even when Zordon gave her the Morpher. But like I said, that's why she sort of made this AI chip, so that way her information can live on forever. Now, where is Grace and Billy talking? Well, it's within a small pocket dimension within the Morphin Grid. Now, we saw kind of the Morphin Grid in Operation Overdrive when Alpha went into it, but Grace Sterling does say that the Morphin Grid can be whatever it wants to be when it presents itself to people. And what we get in this issue when we see the Morphin Grid is it kind of looks like some Space Odyssey stuff going on as they travel through it. So the whole reason why Grace Sterling brought Billy into this pocket dimension so she can explain to him everything that's going on. So the AI Grace does say to Billy, saying, Grace held a lot from you. And Billy says, well, she didn't trust me. And the AI replies with, of course Grace trusted you. But like Zordon, she wanted to protect you because too much information can be a curse. But right now, we don't have the luxury of worrying about what's a curse or what's not a curse anymore. She then goes on to explain by saying, Grace discovered that the Master Arch was created by a being called the Morphonaut, and she found his notes, which is really fascinating because that stuff that happened in Power Rangers universe with the Morphonaut happened many, many years ago, and to find out that Grace found his notes from all those years ago is insane, and I really hope we get some kind of flashback or to some kind of backstory to see how Grace discovered those notes. I know she's dead, so we're probably not going to jump into her mind and learn about that flashback, but I hope we get sort of some like opening story at the start of the book to sort of learn how Grace Sterling discovered those notes. But she then goes on to say that the Morphonaut closed the arch to keep Dark Spectre in his own dimension, something we learned about in Universe, if you remember reading it. And with Mistress Vile using the Zeo Crystal and the Master Arch, well, it triggered an infection across the Morphin Grid and it's toxic to any Ranger out there. Grace Sterling then goes on to say that this sort of toxic spread throughout the Morphin Grid is more bigger than the shattering that happened in Shattered Grid. And Billy asks, what shattering? And that made my brain click as I realized that I feel like Billy, or I believe Billy is the only Ranger that hasn't had his memories restored with what happened in Shattered Grid out of the original 5 Rangers. I believe Tommy's remembered, I believe that Kimberly's remembered, Jason's remembered, Zach's remembered, Trini's remembered, and I think Billy is the only one who hasn't remembered. Maybe Tommy as well, possibly, but I think Billy is like the only one who hasn't remembered or had a moment where he gets his memories back. He's the only one so far. So hearing that what Dark Spectre is doing is on a bigger level than Shattered Grid, it's crazy, and it immediately shows how high the stakes are and how they have to defeat him, because the entire Morphin Grid or the entire Power Rangers universe and history of Power Rangers is at stake here with everything going on, so it sort of sets up everything happening right away. So Grace then tells Billy, saying that he'll need to investigate the shattering on his own and find out how the Morphin Grid can survive this infection by any means necessary. And Billy has no idea how he's going to do this because he says that he's no Tommy, he's no Jason, he's no Trini, he's no Kimberly. He says that he's not even a White or Red Ranger. And Grace then says to him, you're the Blue Ranger, and that means you're the problem solver. You always have been. It's a trait of Blue Rangers to inherently possess, which is an interesting line, that hearing that Blue Rangers are the smart ones, which is not always the case. They're not always the smart ones, but it has been a sort of trait and a quirk through Power Rangers history that the Blue Rangers are the problem solvers in the show. But Grace then goes on to say, saying, hey, you're a Blue Ranger and you are the smart one. You've got the brains to do this. And if there's anyone that can do that, you can. And Grace reassures him, saying that you can do this. And we'll get to the final couple of pages, what happens after this conversation later, because we got to talk about the stuff going on with the Omega Rangers. And then we'll jump back to the big cliffhanger with this issue. All right, let's jump to the Omega Rangers. So we've got Zach and Trini, and they're fighting off a bunch of frauds, and they're struggling to fight them off, but they're suddenly saved by Tommy and Kimberly, and they're trying to figure out what exactly is going on with everything that's going down, because you have these thralls that keep coming out of this portal that's a big crack in the universe, and it looks like it's getting bigger and bigger and moving in on our heroes. So it looks like this infection that Dark Spectre has caused sort of like another shattering, another crack in the universe, and all these thralls are coming right through it. So it looks like no matter what happens, they've got to keep fighting off these thralls because they just keep popping out of there. But one thing that they've also noticed is that with time going on, with them being in this sort of like lava area that they're fighting in, where it's only been a few hours since everything went down in issue 111 when this whole thing began, but Trini and Zack point out that it feels like they've been fighting for days with everything going on. So you've got that going on. And while this is going on, you've also got some banter going on between Kimberly and Tommy, and Kimberly feels like everything's her fault because she says that she disobeyed Zordon's rules, she disobeyed Tommy's rules, and she feels like everything that's going on is her fault because she didn't listen. But Tommy says that's not the case. But before they can sort of have their word-to-word talk, they kind of cut it short because, like I said, they've got to figure out where the hell they are, what the heck is going on. So after that, we then catch up with Matt and Aisha, who are trapped on this strange planet as well. And Matt's all tied up and he's still a sulking mess. But Tommy soon kneels down and has a heart-to-heart talk with Matt with everything going on, where Tommy says, hey, this is probably your worst nightmare. And Matt, being Matt in this state that he's in because he's upset that he's the one that killed Grace, he tells Tommy to get away from him. And Tommy says, I've been there too, you know. But Matt's like, well, you didn't kill anyone. And Tommy goes, Draken did. Draken does. And he's not under any spell. He's just me, which is a really weird comparison. And then Tommy asks, hey, did you remember killing her? And Matt goes, no, I don't. And then Tommy then says to Matt saying, hey, Rita might have warped your mind, taken away your agency, but she didn't take your soul. Maybe she broke you, but you can heal and you won't have to do it alone. So after that, the crack just keeps getting bigger and bigger and more thralls start coming out. And seeing how they're outnumbered, Tommy then cuts the ropes of Matt free. And Tommy says, hey, we've got no choice but to trust you right now. Matt, we need you. We need the Green Ranger. So we get this really cool scene as the Omega Rangers and the Mighty Morphin team, well, Kimberly and Aisha and the Omegas are fighting off the thralls. And then you get this cool Tiger Zord and Dragon Zord morph as Tommy and Matt soon come together to start kicking some ass. But because there's so many thralls, Tommy then decides to stay behind and fight them off as there's so many behind him. But as Tommy's fighting him off, Matt pulls Kimberly away, trying to stop her from getting involved as well, but suddenly a giant ship hovers over them, and this, no doubt about it, it's probably the Hyperforce Rangers coming in to save the day, as they're going to appear in the next issue, probably. So the Hyperforce Rangers are our heroes' assistants right now. We'll probably see them next month. They don't really announce themselves as a big menacing black ship that hovers over them, so that could scream evil, that could scream good, but I'm pretty sure this is the Hyperforce ship that shows up near the end of this issue. So after Grace gives Billy his big speech, Billy wakes up in sort of like the area before that we saw him in last time where the Master Arch was being kept. And on the ground, he sees a chest. And there's a note on there. And the note says, the Master Arch isn't the only thing I found. Good luck. And the note is from Grace. Billy opens up the chest. And what is in there? Well, none other than the power eggs. Now, if you don't remember, the power eggs was something that were introduced way back into Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 1, where the Morphin Masters before Dino Fury and the comics reintroduced them. They were like Japanese stock footage. They put the power eggs in a river and they floated them down the stream. The power eggs were kind of a MacGuffin. They were introduced in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 1, but they didn't play much of a role. In Dual Rangers, in the Sentai, they played sort of a role throughout the show, as they were sort of like the last remaining dino eggs that were going to hatch and the Rangers had to protect them. In Mighty Morphin, they did absolutely nothing. They were brought up once and they were never brought up ever again. Here in the comics, it looks like they're going to be playing a much bigger role than they were before, which I'm excited to see what Melissa will probably be doing with the power eggs now they're introduced again. So I'm curious to see what's inside those eggs and what might hatch from them. That is like the big mystery with everything going on. But yeah, that's where Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 112 ends. It ends with Billy discovering the chest with the power eggs in there, and that's like a really cool twist as you see those 2 power eggs in there. And the mystery is what's in those power eggs and what's going to hatch from them. Because no doubt about it, whatever's in those eggs is probably our saving grace with everything going on in Darkest Hour. But that was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 112. Overall, I thought this was a pretty solid issue. A lot of talking, a lot of character interaction. But like I said, this was sort of like the fallout with everything that happened last month. And it looks like next month we'll be picking up with some more action, as I believe that's when the Hyperforce Rangers are going to show up as well with everything going on. And I think the Death Ranger might be playing a role in next month's issue as well, if I remember the solicitations correctly. But anyway, guys, I thought this issue was pretty solid. What did you guys think of this issue? Tell me in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. With that said, I'm out of here. Have a wonderful day or night. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out, take care, and bye. Thanks for watching. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 113 is finally out with a beautiful cover of the Death Ranger on there, and you have the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers in the visor, which is a very interesting cover because the Death Ranger isn't really the focus of this month's issue. He's got one scene in this issue, but it's not a big important scene. But it could be setting up something later for the character later down the line. But either way, it's a gorgeous cover. So Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 113 picks up where the last issue left off on, where Billy had received the power eggs from Grace Sterling, and this issue mostly focuses on Billy and his adventures with the Draken Rangers in this issue. But we also get to see the Hyperforce Rangers as well in this issue. The Dino Charge Rangers show up in this issue as well. But not only that, you also get a little Dark Spectre and Rita doing some plotting as well. So let's take it from the top and talk about Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 113. So the issue starts off in another dimension, that being Amber Beach Dinosaur Zoo. That's right, we're starting in the Dino Charge dimension for this issue. And the first thing we see is Miss Kendall Morgan looking at the computers and realizing that something has gone wrong with the morphin grid, and she's trying to figure out what's going on. So she tells the other Rangers not to morph, and Tyler's like, hey, we can't do that. Like, morphing is whole part of being a Ranger. And then suddenly an alert goes off, and Mistress Vile and Dark Spectre have invaded their universe. They're coming through, and the Rangers quickly jump to action, and seeing how there's a threat involved, they quickly decide to morph, Tyler ignoring her orders. The only one who don't morph in this situation is Shelby and Ivan. Now, while this is going on, you have Keeper coming, I meant to say Keeper, but I said Creeper. You've got Keeper looking like a creeper coming in possessed by, I guess, Mistress Vile. He's been taken over as well in some kind of situation, but he starts attacking Kendall, and things don't look good for her. We're kind of left on this ominous cliffhanger if she's okay or not in this issue. But when the Dino Charge Rangers morph, they are quickly possessed by Dark Spectre's energy, becoming evil Rangers, now taken over by their influence. So now the Dino Charge Rangers have turned evil. And while this is going on, Mistress Vile says to Dark Spectre, saying, as promised, everything will be yours. So this is really great that we're actually visiting other dimensions in the Power Rangers universe, or other timelines and stuff like that. So It looks like we're getting another Shattered Grid situation where we're going to be jumping through other Ranger timelines and stuff like that and seeing what other seasons are up to. Now, I'm wondering if we're going to visit RPM because they're another dimension as well. So who knows if we'll be doing a little bit of time traveling, but it looks like we'll be seeing other Rangers from other dimensions in this upcoming story arc. And I couldn't be even more excited because that means we're going to have different Rangers playing a role in this story, much like Shattered Grid, so fingers crossed Jen might show up in the story arc as well. So Billy then wakes up in a bunker and there's a bunch of soldiers running around, there's a bunch of people in this bunker and Torona's there as well, and apparently there's some kind of monster attack going on right now. And there's an interesting back and forth between Torona and one of the soldiers as he says that we've got a lot of refugees, some of them aren't even American citizens, they aren't even human, so they're not our priority, which is an interesting conversation to have in this comic because this is years before SPD takes place, and then you've got this one soldier guy going, hey, these guys aren't human, they're not American, I don't give a fuck, who cares about them, so screw them. So that's an interesting insight to see how this one soldier kind of views like alien life force sort of taking refuge on this planet with everything going on, compared to SPD where years later down the line where you have humans and aliens living side by side. So it's an interesting contrast to see where the world is at during the Mighty Morphin era and where it's going to be later down the line. So that's just like food for thought right there. So Billy soon catches up with Torona and gives him the news that Grace is dead, and he's shocked to hear it. But hearing that there's a monster attack, Billy soon jumps into action and he tells Torona saying, hey, tell Tommy I'm coming. And Torona goes, Billy, those aren't your Rangers. And then we cut to the next page and we've got Mummy Longlegs from Poppy Playhouse fighting against all the soldiers, and Billy quickly jumps into action. And I gotta say, this Mummy Longlegs, this gooey, stretchy, weird looking monster thing is freaky. It is just freaky looking. Like the gums are sort of like bleeding into the mouth and stuff like that. It's got gross yellow teeth. It's got big yellow eyes. It's scary looking. It is freaky looking. Props to the artist who drew that design. It looks freaking terrifying and I love it. Oh, it's freaky. So Billy fights it along with the Thralls, but suddenly the Draken Rangers jump in, that being Kia and Scorpina. And you see how things are handled very differently in this fight. Our Billy wants to pull the arms in a different direction, and as they're pulling it apart, Billy says on free, let go. But Kia quickly jumps into free, and then Scorpina just like decapitates the monster. So it shows that the Draken Rangers do things very differently compared to Billy, where Billy had this big, probably elaborate plan planned out, and the Draken Rangers are like, screw it, we're going to cut its head off, we're going to do things by brute force. So Billy is soon realized that he's talking to Kia right now, but I do like the banter that Scorpina and Kia have, how Billy's gotten taller, and Billy has no idea that he's in Angel Grove. He thinks he's in another dimension right now with everything going on, but that's not the case, as Kia soon tells him saying, hey, you're home right now. And the whole reason why this is happening is because ever since the Darkest Hour took place and like no Rangers have been around, Finster has sort of turned Earth into sort of like his monster sort of creating grounds, and that's why he's creating all these monsters on Earth. So he's sort of turned into like a base where he can build his forces. So Billy reunites with Zordon and World of the Coinless Treaty, and I love the banter here again where Scorpina is looking a little jealous that she's given Billy a hug, and Kia is right there to give her shit by saying, hey, you're looking a little green right there, and Scorpina just replies with, shut up, it's better than looking blue all the time, which, God, I love the banter and back and forth between these two. It's so much fun. Like, the writing that Melissa's doing for these two characters is lovely. It's fun. But it also shows there's some kind of romance between Trini and Scorpina. It looks like they've got feelings for each other, and that kind of is brought up again near the end of the issue. So it looks like there's some kind of relationship between World of the Coinless Trini and Scorpina, which is interesting. I never thought they would actually get together. Maybe the signs were there the whole time, but it looks like there's some kind of romance there between the two characters. So I wonder where that's going to go moving forward. So we soon learn from Coinless Bulk that when Mistress Vile and Dark Spectre invaded the Morphin Grid, a bomb went off, you could say, and sucked everyone through the Master Arch, which is why everyone got separated. And you had the Draken Rangers along with Yale and Kevor, who ended up on Earth along with a bunch of safe haven aliens, which is why we had the alien refugees earlier on at the start of the issue. So Billy then starts asking, saying, hey, how can you guys morph again? And then suddenly Draken walks in, talking shit, saying that he was surprised that Billy was the one who survived. And Billy is ready to throw hands. He morphs, he blasts Draken with the Blade Blaster, and Draken does some Matrix maneuvers right there, which I'm surprised he can bend like that. Looking at him like, dang, those knees. But Draken gets a good punch in, and Billy gets a good stab in with the lance. And Scorpina and Trini have to break it up. And you've got Billy being held back by Kia and Bulk, and you've got Draken being held back by Trini and Scorpina, and they're raring to go. And I like it how Kia's like, hey, you stabbed the guy. That's more I ever got. Quit while you're ahead. And Draken's like, I'll kill him. He's dead. And one thing I love about this is on the next page, where Draken's like, he impaled me. I don't like getting impaled. Really, Draken, the guy who's impaled several people through several years of this comics run, who is probably known for impaling people, doesn't like getting impaled. He guess when the shoe's on the other foot, he doesn't like it. But Trini goes, hey, if you hurt him, I'll kill you myself. So Zordon tells them to calm down because they've got bigger things afoot. They got to work together. After that, we then cut the safe haven, and we have Mistress Vile talking the Dark Spectre, who's sitting on this really badass throne right now. And he learns that their infection is growing. It's getting stronger. And with a single morph, the Rangers will be infected by their influence, by their power, and it's even stronger than what the Death Ranger can do. And the Death Ranger's like, but my Rangers! And Dark Spectre's like, hey, I gave you your powers, and I can take it away. So the Death Ranger here is kind of made look like a bitch, because the Death Ranger was this big threat in charge to 100. Here, on the power pole, on the totem pole, they're at the bottom when it comes to Dark Spectre. They're not at the bottom, but they're not at the top anymore. So they've been knocked down a few pegs right now. So readers like, we have truly taken the power for ourselves. And Dark Spectre's like, hey, well, there is no we. This victory is mine and mine alone. The power you got from me, the power you have came from me. And while this is going on, you've got everyone watching in shock. It looks like they're even scared to watch. It looks like Dane isn't even watching. He's turning his head to the side, but that's just Dane's design in general. But Mistress Vile is put in her place as Dark Spectre says, hey, you serve me, and we will not rest until the Morphin Grid belongs to me. So Dark Spectre is doing this all-for-one thing going on right now. I'm a one-man army. Everyone serves me. It all belongs to me, with everything going on. So yeah, you kind of see this new dynamic between Mistress Vile and Dark Spectre, where she spent her whole life trying to summon Dark Spectre. And like Grace said, he'll treat you like everyone else, as a pawn. And we've already seen that already, so it looks like Grace was right in the end. And Dark Spectre is just using her as a pawn, as another means to get the power that he needs to control the Morphin Grid. But it looks like they're going to go off finding more Rangers, which I wonder where they're going to go, which, knowing the solicitations, I get the feeling where they're going to go. But I'm excited to see like Dark Spectre actually fight in Zordon's body, and we can actually get a glimpse of his power and the destruction he can cause. So after that, we then cut to the Hyperforce Rangers, who happen to save Kendall from whatever was happening. And the Hyperforce Rangers have been getting a call from someone who they don't like. Who that person is? Well, it's none other than Draken. And if you've seen Hyperforce before, then you know the relationship that the Hyperforce Rangers have with Draken. But these couple of pages were a lot of fun, because you've got Eddie geeking out over Billy, again talking about a Hyperforce episode where he met Aisha in that one, and Vesper's telling him to calm down, which is a lot of fun. But Draken's requested the Hyperforce Rangers to find 6 specific rangers, and trying to find 6 specific rangers, as Eddie puts it, is finding a needle through a haystack. Who are these 6 specific rangers that Draken wants the Hyperforce Rangers to find? Well, I'm guessing it's the Mighty Morphin team, no doubt about it. So our heroes swing at the 411 with everything going on, and they realize that they need to form numbers, because they're safer in numbers, and they need to find as many rangers as they can to combat Mistress Vile and Dark Spectre. So I'm really hoping that we're going to see an army of rangers in this final arc, where we get this big confrontational showdown between all of these rangers and Dark Spectre. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. But I do wonder what other rangers we're going to find out there in Darkest Hour. So fingers crossed we'll see some more ranger teams showing up in this book moving forward. So seeing how they've got to find the 6 specific rangers, but not only that, they've also got to gather as many allies that they can find, many as rangers that they can find. They've got to start looking, and they've got to go through the Morphin Grid, but they don't know where to start looking. But Billy said that he's got a plan. So they go back to where that Master Arch was a couple of issues ago, and Finster is there guarding it, but they quickly scare him off. And this is where we get some tension between Coinless Trini and Billy, where Billy had been giving her the silent treatment. And the whole reason why Billy's upset is because she's teaming up with Kia, Scorpina, and of course Draken. And this is where I said you can sort of see possibly the relationship between Trini and Scorpina, because Trini is quick to defend her and says, hey, leave Scorpina out of this because I trust her. And Billy's like, are you kidding? She's evil. The Trini I know would never do that. And Coinless Trini says, I'm not the Trini you know. Our world has gone to shit. We've lost Kimberly, we've lost Zach, we've lost everyone else we've cared about, including you. And then she goes on the same. This is a really good back and forth between the two of them. And she goes to Billy saying, I know it doesn't make sense to you, and you still see the world as good and evil. And Draken is an evil piece of crap, but right now, this isn't about good or evil. It's about survival. And that's what it's always been about when it comes to the Coinless. It's always been about survival. Good, evil, it doesn't always matter to them. And right now in the story arc, it's about survival. And that's I like that point of view that she's got. So she then goes on to say to Billy saying, and I'm making the choices I never thought you'd have to make. And they soon come to an agreement. So Billy's got the plan, he's got the power eggs, and this is where we learn that the power eggs have something very interesting inside of them. So Billy goes, these are the power eggs. Zordon once said they contain the power of the universe inside of them, and they belong to the Morphin Masters. Grace found them and gave them to me. So what Billy's going to do is he's going to lay up the eggs against the Master Arch, and as they morph, it should hopefully power up the Arch. So we get Trini, we get Billy morphing, but as they morph, suddenly a big explosion happens, and on the final page, you have the Phantom Ranger pointing his gun at Billy saying, what have you done? So that's where 113 ends off on, with the Phantom Ranger, and it was a really cool cliffhanger. I was not expecting to turn the page and see the Phantom Ranger back, and I had the feeling that we'd see the Phantom Ranger again, but I wasn't expecting him to see him so soon. But now that he's here, and he's coming face to face with Billy with a barrel in his face, I am curious to see what the Phantom Ranger's role is going to be moving forward in this upcoming story arc and how he's going to assist the Rangers, because the Phantom Ranger is connected to Dark Spectre from Power Rangers universe all those years ago, so we've got that history there, but it's cool to finally see him here. Now, I do wonder how he's going to help the Rangers moving forward, and how did he just show up out of nowhere here? Like, he just blasted his way through it, and there's going to be a reason why he's here, because he's questioning, what have you done, to Billy as he's pointing the gun at him. So I get the feeling that he might have got here a little bit too late, and he probably thinks that Billy might have been the one that activated the arch and caused all this or something. I don't know, but it's cool to see the Phantom Ranger here, and I do wonder what's going to happen with this guy moving forward. But anyway, guys, that was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 113. Once again, Melissa is killing it. Another solid issue, another freaking fantastic issue, and I can't wait to see where the comic is going to go next in November with 114, so I'm really, really excited to read that. So with that said, I'm out of here. Have a wonderful day or night. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out, take care, and bye. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 114 is out now. The Darkest Hour storyline continues, and Melissa is still killing it with this storyline. I am loving Darkest Hour as it comes out every month, and this issue was another fantastic issue, because this issue, you feel dread for our heroes with everything going on, as you feel like their backs are pushed against the wall with everything going on, because you've got Tommy captured, you've got several other Rangers captured. There's a lot going on in this issue, and there's a lot to dissect and talk about with this issue we're going to be talking about on the channel. So let's dive into Mighty Morphin Power Rangers 114. So the issue opens up on Safe Haven, where you've got Adam and Rocky in their holding cells. Rocky's doing push-ups, Adam is meditating. Rocky doesn't want to sit still for too long, because he says if he sits still, then he's going to think about his family and worry about the danger they might be in, which is understandable because Rocky cares a lot about his family. Anyone else would in this situation. But we soon find out that Rocky and Adam aren't the only ones in these holding cells, as they're surrounded by several other Rangers from all these different universes and timelines. We've got Dino Charge, Operation Overdrive, Mystic Force, Ninja Steel, Lost Galaxy, Wild Force, and SPD. And that's one thing that I really do like, because you've got all these different Rangers on this panel from different series, different dimensions, different timelines, and you get to see them interacting with the Mighty Morphin team. You get to see them interacting with Rocky and Adam. And one thing I do like is Rocky says, "Oh, we're Mighty Morphin," and Adam says, "Yo, I thought we haven't decided on a name yet," which is, if you don't get that reference, at the end of Mighty Morphin of the Matt Groom run, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers team didn't really have like a name. They just called themselves the Power Rangers. So one of the last things you see in that run is you see a big whiteboard, and they've got all these different names trying to decide on what they want to call themselves, and eventually they land on Mighty Morphin. So it's cool to see that that conversation probably continued later down the line, and that's the name they chose to stick with. So Rocky and Adam, they're in the holding cell, and they're soon approached by Chloe's father, who calls himself Angel, and he says, "Now it's time to introduce you to Dark Spectre." So this shows that things ain't going to be looking good for our heroes if they're going to be coming face to face with Dark Spectre after getting taken out of their prison cells. So after that, we then come back to the Bermuda Triangle, where Billy was staring down the barrel of the Phantom Ranger's gun, and he's pissed off. He's like, "Wait, you rebuilt my proto-arch?" He's like, "It was never meant to be rebuilt." And now Dark Spectre's crossed over to this universe, and Billy's like, "Hey, it wasn't us. It was a friend of ours, but they're no longer with us. And it wasn't our goal to bring Dark Spectre over. Someone else did that." And while the Phantom Ranger is pointing his gun at Billy, you have Coinless Trini jumping in, being a badass, putting the Phantom Ranger in a hold and holding her weapons close to his neck. And we get a good look at the Draken Ranger Sabertooth Tiger daggers, and although they're kind of exactly the same, they've got some more sharp edges on them throughout the middle blade, which makes them look really badass because they look really cool and they sort of infuse with the Draken Ranger design they've got going on with them. So The Phantom Ranger does say the trainee, saying, hey, you can cut me up as much as you want with those blades. There's not going to be a lot under this suit, which teases that there's nothing under the Phantom Ranger's suit. It's just a soul, it's just a phantom, it's just that grid energy that we learnt about in Edge of Darkness. So the Phantom Ranger asks Billy, why are you trying to use the power eggs? Because the power eggs, they're very powerful, and you probably don't know how powerful they are to begin with, and why are you using them as a key? Because if you're not careful, you could shatter the very existence of this universe you're trying to save. So Billy's like, hey, we didn't have much of a choice here. And then the Phantom Ranger goes on to sort of talk about how he ended up here. And he goes on to say that he was sort of trying to find the emissaries with everything that's going on. He was traveling the galaxy, trying to go through the dark ends of the galaxy, dark ends of space, trying to find the emissaries. But he was soon trapped once the infection happened, until he was summoned through the arch when Darkest Hour began. So Coinless Trini asks what's the emissaries, because they probably don't have them in their universe, and the Phantom Ranger gives the lore drop and probably the simplest explanation on what the emissaries are and what happened in Power Rangers universe. So the Phantom Ranger goes on to saying they're former children of the Morphin Masters who initially discovered the grid and studied it, and in an order to stop Dark Spectre, the emissaries tapped directly into the Morphin Grid's power, merging with it, and now are forever in a flux. The Phantom Ranger then also reveals that the emissaries are trying to contact the Morphin Masters and are probably our last hope to stop this infection, which is teasing what we're probably going to be getting within the next couple of months. And then Billy says, unless they're trapped too. And the Phantom Ranger's like, yeah, that's what I'm worried about as well. So suddenly their talk is interrupted as they're getting radio comms from Bulk with what's going down with the Hyperforce Rangers and the remaining Mighty Morphin Rangers in the quarry. So we quickly cut to them, and this is where things get crazy even more. So after that, we then cut to the Angel Grove Quarry, which is interesting to learn. I know, they're at the quarry, fascinating, but when Darkest Hour first began and we first saw the Omega Rangers, we saw Trini and Zack, it said they were somewhere, so I honestly didn't know if they were on Earth or not, because who knows where everyone got pulled to when Darkest Hour began. But it looks like they're still on Earth and they're having a battle at the quarry, but you've got the Hyperforce Rangers and you've got Miss Kendall and Taylor coming in to save them. So while this is going on, you've got Squad driving some heavy machinery and Finster standing on top of a crane where it looks like they're getting into some construction work, but really this is part of Finster's plan. So as this battle's going on, you've got the Hyperforce Rangers and the Mighty Morphin team, the Omega Rangers, sort of like a mix and match of everyone trying to fight off the Thralls. And while this is going on, Finster creates a monster by combining the crane and the bulldozer into Crano-Fand. And this is one crazy looking design. I didn't even know Finster could do this, and this just shows how crazy and what power level he's on right now with combining stuff into monsters. I mean, if he can do this into, if he can turn stuff like that into monsters, who knows what he can turn into monsters. But I really do dig the design. The design looks really crazy. The Hyperforce Rangers and the Mighty Morphin team question, how does it even look like an elephant? Because it looks more like a spider with a big snout going on for it. So it's got a weird name, but it's got a really cool design. I really freaking love it. This thing kicks ass. So while this is going on, the Hyperforce Rangers summon the Kronos Hyperforce Megazord. We kind of saw it in Shattered Grid, but it did combine with a bunch of other Megazords, and this is our first looking at it. And I gotta say, it's got a pretty cool design. I really do like digging it. I think there was concept art of it back in the day, but this is our first time seeing the main Zord of the Hyperforce Rangers in the comics, and it looks really freaking great. So while this is going on, Kimberly is fighting off Thralls, and she says, I can send in air support if you need help, but suddenly the Death Ranger shows up. And when the Death Ranger just appears out of nowhere, this is a big oh shit moment, because suddenly the Death Ranger's here. So The Death Ranger grabs a hold of Kimberly and says to her, saying, I am in need of new Rangers, and you called to me. Your soul is in a flux. Your heart is broken. Would you like me to fix you? And while this is going on, while the Death Ranger is holding on to Kimberly, you can see the fear in her eyes, which the artwork here is fantastic because like you get the close-up on her and you can sort of see like the fear and terror on Kimberly's face as the Death Ranger has a hold of her. But suddenly, Matt comes to the rescue. Spear tackles the Death Ranger off her, and this is where the battle comes to a close as Finster and Squad are teleported away, but the Death Ranger leaves with this ominous message saying, perhaps another time, Kimberly. I'll give your regards to your love. So that's where this battle ends, and then we cut back to Safe Haven, and this is where we catch up with Tommy Oliver as he's been captured. He's face to face with Dark Spectre, and Dark Spectre's like, the White Ranger has a mythical reputation, and he's excited to turn Tommy into his own fighter. But not only that, he knows that Tommy is out of his league here. He says, you're a child on his knees. You stink of fear despite putting on a brave face. And the White Ranger powers, they were never designed to be used for evil, but Dark Spectre wants to change that and throws him one of their own morphers, the Dark Spectre morphers, and he says, I'm giving you a chance. So Tommy tries morphing in front of Dark Spectre and Mistress Vile, but he gets blasted by Mistress Vile, and you just see him screaming and gasping for air as he's fighting the conversion. So he's fighting for his life, and he's able to resist the conversion as he's unable to be turned by Dark Spectre. And there's a moment where it seems like that Tommy's been taken over, but as Dark Spectre calls him to come towards him, Tommy says never and takes out Saba and goes for the attack. But suddenly, Tommy is blasted in the back by Rocky and Adam as he sees his friends converted into Dark Spectre Rangers, and they start attacking him as well. So Tommy is seemingly knocked out from being sneak attacked by Adam and Rocky in their new evil forms, and Dark Spectre is pissed off at Mistress Vile, saying, you promised me a White Ranger, why isn't he turned? And Mistress Vile's like, Master, I don't. And you can sort of see the fear on Rita's face as Dark Spectre's pissed off at her, because like ever since Darkest Hour began, and we saw this last week as well, like although Mistress Vile is doing things to please Dark Spectre, there are moments where he's getting pissed off at her, he's losing her patience with her. So it looks like that even though she's serving her new master, she's still incompetent as she was when she worked under Zed back in the day. So it seems like whatever Rita does, she can't seem to please anyone right now, depending on what evil lord she works under. So after that, we then have a page where we cut to Promethea and the Omega Rangers are reunited. While this is going on, you have Kimberly watching, and Matt walks up to her saying, it should have been me, I should have been one to stay behind. And Kimberly says, it's not your fault, it's my fault. Tommy's Tommy. I'm sure he'll be fine. But you have Kimberly carrying the burden and blaming herself with everything that's going on, because Kimberly, she's been reckless this past couple of issues, and she probably feels like that recklessness, her breaking the rules and acting out on anger after what happened to Matt, that's what led to Tommy getting captured and Tommy putting himself in danger to protect everyone. So you can sort of see that anger manifesting in Kim within the next couple of pages, but you can tell that she feels guilty with everything that's been going on recently and what Tommy has done. So she blames herself right now. After that, we then come back to the command center where we've got Zordon and the Phantom Ranger reuniting. And Zordon does comment on the Phantom Ranger losing his physical body in pursuit of good like himself. But then the Phantom Ranger has this line saying, allow yourself to grieve, Zordon. Our losses are too many to count. It will shore our resolve for what's to come. And this bit of dialogue made me raise an eyebrow because, wait, what's to come? Our resolve? Does the Phantom Ranger know about if Zordon sacrifices himself, it will unleash the Z-Wave and restore, like, good across the universe by purifying everything? Like, does the Phantom Ranger know about that? And is that the trick up his sleeve that they might have to resort to in the comic doing it earlier? I wonder if that's what he's talking about. But Draken comes in saying, hey, what are you going to do beyond licking our wounds here? So the Phantom Ranger says we need to find the Morphin Masters, but we can't really find them because we have to go into an arch, and the one that we used is broken, and the only one that we know that actually works is on Safe Haven. And this is where Billy has this really cool line by saying, well, that's not entirely true. And I do like how he's drawn here, the pose that he's doing, because he's sort of doing like the anime push back your glasses, I've got a plan in mind. So after that, they go back to the triangle and they sort through the rubble trying to think of a plan. And Draken's losing his temper as Billy's trying to think of a plan with everything going on. Now, Billy still has the power eggs on him, and I really do like that attention to detail where he's carrying them around wherever he goes, because those are sort of like the key to helping them out in Darkest Hour. So I do like how Billy's carrying the power eggs wherever he goes, but Draken's getting pissed off. He's like, think faster, nerd. And Billy's like, hey, want me to stab you again? And Draken's like, I'd like to see you try. And then Kimberly just steps forward, socks him right in the stomach, punches him right in the gut. First thing I saw when I saw this panel was like that scene in Smiling Friends where Charlie punches the demon and it's just on the ground wheezing. I can just picture Draken doing that right now. He's just on the ground like wheezing heavily from like Kimberly punching him right in the gut, which, God, like that line I love. I like how Draken's like, he's not the tough guy here anymore. Anyone can just like kick the crap out of him and he's on his knees. Like Billy stabbed him last time. Kimberly punched him in the gut. He took a shotgun from Jason in like the world of the Coinless. Like Draken ain't on like top form anymore. He's getting the shit kicked out of him, which is kind of funny. And I do like how they use these moments for like these serious comedic relief moments where you just see Draken getting the crap kicked out of him. So Kimberly says, we don't have time. We need a working master arch. And I know where one is. And how about we retake Safe Haven? So that's the last page where Kimberly says we should retake Safe Haven. And on the final page, you see Safe Haven being surrounded by Thrall, surrounded by ships, but not only that, you see several other Rangers standing amongst them. And the Rangers we see some interesting choices. So, of course, you've got Rocky and Adam. They're being taken over. I believe you see on the top of the platform, you see either Samurai Pink or that could be Lauren being taken over. I'm not entirely sure. It's hard to tell because like they're in the distance really far away and you can't really see the kanji on their helmet. You've got Operation Overdrive green and yellow. You've got SPD red. And you've got Samurai blue here. And they're all being taken over by Dark Spectre, and you see several Thrall around them. You see Thralls of all different shapes and sizes as they're standing in front of like the base. So that's where 114 ends. Overall, this was a fantastic issue. I really enjoyed it. Melissa is killing it with Darkest Hour, and I can't wait to see where it's going to go next because we've got several issues of Darkest Hour to go. I believe Darkest Hour is ending on 124, and seeing how they're planning on taking back Safe Haven already, this seems like it's setting up for like the final act with everything going on. So I do wonder where the next couple of issues are going to go moving forward, because the solicitations for 117 are out already for like February's issue. We've got the Morphin Master book coming out. So there's a lot going down with this Darkest Hour storyline, and I can't wait to see where it's going to go next, because it looks like we're going to get all these different Rangers throwing hands, and I can't wait to see all these interactions and see even more corrupt Rangers in Darkest Hour. So this issue was fantastic, and I can't wait to see where it's going to go next. What are your thoughts on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 114? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Tell me in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Well, with that said, I'm out of here. Have a wonderful day or night, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out. Take care. Bye. Okay, here we are, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 115, the final Power Rangers comic of the year. And I'm going to be honest, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers has been a hell of a ride this year. We started off at the start of the year with the Rita flashback of how she became Mistress Vile, and then we had Darkest Hour this year, and that kicked off as well when we got that announcement earlier at the start of the year. We also had 2 Power Rangers Unlimited books, that being the Coinless and the Hyperforce one-shot, and they were great. I really enjoyed them. But Darkest Hour has been on fire this past couple of months, and I've been loving every issue. Melissa has been killing it. And this issue we wrap up for the end of the year ends on a crazy cliffhanger, and I can't wait to see where it's going to go next moving forward. So, without any further ado, let's talk about Mighty Morphin Power Rangers 115. So the issue opens up on Safe Haven, and you have Rita talking to Tommy, and she's trying to convince him to come back to her side and serve her once again, because she says, hey, I gave you a purpose, I gave you meaning, I'm the reason why, the whole reason you became a ranger, so come serve me again. And Tommy just laughs in her face and says, nah, I'm good, because he goes on to say that Zordon saved him and the Rangers are his family and they're the ones that give him hope and a reason to live. And he then goes on to say, and this is one line that I really did like in the comic because it calls back to when the comics first started, all those years ago, when Tommy says, I saw you in my dreams for months after I broke free of your curse, and you haunted me. The trauma and guilt infested me. I still have nightmares. There's no thanking you, Rita. And I really like that callback that Melissa wrote in there because, like I said, it's a callback to how Tommy felt when this comic first started, because he had nightmares of what he'd done. He had nightmares of him killing the other Rangers, which sort of alluded and teased the Draken and the Carl Higgins run back in the day. But then it goes even deeper with how this goes on with the writing, where he says, there's no serving an abuser. And I think you know that, because abuse is a cycle, and I've seen how he treats you. So, once again, Tommy being a boss in this comic and figuring out Rita right away, and you can tell with the reaction she gives on her face, it hit her really hard because she gives this look that she's like concerned, but then she says, hey, how about I just let you rot in here? But what Tommy said about the cycle of abuse is something that many characters have brought up to Rita before, how she's got daddy issues, she moves from one villain to another to try and make them happy, and this is none other than the same. Like, Tommy's got it figured out as well. Grace pointed it out earlier before this whole story arc even went down. But yeah, you could say that Rita is in this cycle of abuse with all these different villains, and Dark Spectre's no different than all the other villains that Rita serves. So there's that going on. After that, we then cut to Promethea on Earth, and we have our Rangers sorting out their counterattack to take down Dark Spectre and sneak into Safe Haven. And this page I really enjoyed because Matt's telling him the plan by saying, hey, for months, Mistress Vile recruited generals from all reaches of space and offered them rewards in the name of serving Dark Spectre, and most of them remain loyal. And Draken's like, I didn't. And Coinless Trinity's like, no, you ran. And Draken tries clapping back by saying, well, would you rather have me on this side than hers? And Kimberly just chimes in by saying, I'd rather neither, honestly. And I really love how this scene is drawn because, like, Trini's doing the folded arms and closed eyes expression, and Kim's just, like, staring at her nails, even though she's got, like, the gloves on. She's just giving that I don't really give a fuck pose. I really enjoyed this panel with how it was drawn and just the interaction between all the characters. But Aisha chimes in and just says, hey, can you let Matt finish? But as Matt goes to finish, he has kind of like this mental breakdown as he remembers what Rita did to him. So he runs off and says he just needs a second. And Aisha follows him, and we get this scene where she does some breathing exercises with him to calm him down. And I really do like how this page is drawn as well, but it's a really nice Aisha and Matt moment where Aisha says, hey, I had some anxiety when I was younger and my parents put me into therapy, so I learned a few tricks. So this is a really nice moment between the two characters as they're just talking. And Matt says, like, I'm sorry, but I can't get it out of my head. And Aisha says, it's not your fault, but if you want to sit out this mission, you're more than welcome to. But Matt's like, I want to be okay again. And Aisha replies with, I know. So you still have Matt having that mental trauma that Tommy mentioned earlier, where he can't get Rita out of his head and it's still haunting him. But he's got some good friends beside him that can help him out and be of assistance. So I really like that scene here where they're hugging and they're sort of comforting each other, trying to make each other feel better. So this was like a really nice scene between the two characters. While this is going on, you've got the Rangers still in the meeting room discussing with everything going on, and you've got Draken hanging shit on Matt, calling him Greenie 2.0, calling him useless, and Coinless Trini is like, dude, just shut the fuck up. Don't be a dick right now. Can you not be you for like 5 seconds? And Draken's like, oh, well, the trauma inflicted on the youth is very impressionable these days. Guess we'll have to move forward without his precious intel, although he didn't have much to begin with. So I really love how Draken's just a jerk ass in this situation. And Coinless Trini's like, dude, just stop it right now. But then Zach has an idea where he says there's an underground tunnel in Eternity Point, and real Trini, mainline Trini, goes on to say, Kevor and Yale found it when they were exploring one day. It nearly collapsed on them, but their plan is to sneak in and get closer enough to the chamber so they don't have to deal with a full-on assault once they enter safe haven. But they've also got to deal with, hey, once they're discovered, they're going to be dealing with a large army. So they think that Miss Morgan can think of something to help them out, but then Zordon's like, oh, perhaps. And then after that, we cut to the moon where Zordon does say there's another ranger we can call on. So this scene is kind of funny. So we've got Lord Zed in his moon palace. He's just chilling there. And Goldar comes in saying, my lord, we've received news that Rita is on safe haven. The time is right. We must take your Zord. And Lord Zed's like, nah, man, the Zord has stalled, you imbecile. It won't work right now. So we're just going to stay here. And Goldar's like, oh, what if we get another ship? And Lord Zed's like, no, she's got an army. Let's not do that. And Dark Spectre. So I feel like that Lord Zed is just chilling out here and just waiting for everything to blow over because he knows how powerful Dark Spectre is, and even he knows that he can't win this fight, so he's just going to chill back here and wait for all of this to blow over. I could be wrong, but Lord Zed's not on the battlefield, but whenever Goldar shoots him an idea, he quickly turns him down. So is Lord Zed scared of what's happening right now, or is he just thinking of a different plan? I don't know. But suddenly a meteor comes crashing down, and this scene was really funny as well, where they think it's a bomb, and Goldar goes, it's a bomb, run Lord Zed, I'll use my body to cover it and give you time to escape. But it's not a bomb. What it turns out to be is a beacon, and Zordon comes to give Lord Zed a offer, and that being saying, hey, Promethea will let you keep the Zord if you help us. But Lord Zed's like, hey, that Promethea tech is attached to Serpentera. It belongs to me. And like I said, Zordon goes to say, hey, we'll let you keep it. You just got to help us out first. And I really enjoy it when Zordon goes to make bargains with his allies. You saw that in Shattered Grid when he went to approach Rita to make a deal with her when they did the assault on the Moon Palace against Draken. And again, I like it here with Zordon trying to bargain with Lord Zed because he knows that Lord Zed wants to take out Rita. So he's trying to find a deal to compromise with him. And those two used to be allies back in the day, so they have some kind of understanding with what both sides want. So I really do like that. And not only that, like I said, it was a funny scene with the villains, with Babu and Goldar here. I definitely got a kick out of with the comedy writing that Melissa put in there. So next up is a really nice moment between Kimberly and Jason because we haven't had these two characters interacting much within the past couple of years of the comics because we've had the Omega Ranger stuff, and the two characters have been off doing their own thing, so it's nice to have these two original Rangers interacting with one another, but they do have a very deep conversation with one another. So Kimberly is treating Jason's head injuries that he got from Matt before Darkest Hour even started, and Jason says that he can't pretend that he's not a Ranger anymore. Well, then Kimberly goes on to say by saying she doesn't even know what it means to be a Ranger at this point because Draken, Kia, and Lord Zed, they're all Rangers. She doesn't even know how that's fair, and in what universe does this make sense? Everything is shattered, and now there's no rules. So, before she can go on and keep talking, Jason interrupts by saying, is there any word from Tommy? And she says no. But she then tells Jason by saying, hey, if we don't make it back, they're coming from Earth, and there won't be any Rangers here to defend it, so promise me that you will. And Jason says that he promises. So, this was a really nice moment between the two characters that we had, as they're at their breaking points. Like, Kimberly's at her breaking point, as a lot of people have been speculating that after Darkest Hour, this is when Kimberly's going to retire and probably Kat will take over being a Ranger in this alternate timeline. And this is like the worst that the Rangers have ever been, as they're pushed to their limits with this whole Dark Spectre stuff in Darkest Hour. So every choice that they make matters, and like I said, they've been pushed up against the wall here, so every decision they make counts, and if they mess up, well, that's the entire universe done for. And if they fail on this mission, then that's possibly all the Rangers done for as well, with everything going on. So, yeah, this was a really nice moment between the two characters, and I really enjoyed it. Alright, so the next couple of pages of this comic is when shit hits the fan. So, we're back on Safe Haven, and you have Dane just staring at Coda and Tyler, and he's wondering what goes on in their head if they're mind-controlled, and Finster says, well, whatever personality they had has been locked away, and all they do is they serve Mistress Vile and Dark Spectre. So we kind of get a glimpse and a hint of how these powers work when the Rangers are controlled, because their personality is taken over, and their will is stripped away, and all they can do is serve evil. So Dane's kind of shocked about that with everything going on, but Finster does warn him by saying, hey, be careful because Dark Spectre is not one for forgiveness, and you'll end up just like the Death Ranger. So on the next page, we then cut to Dark Spectre torturing the Death Ranger and inflicting like the dark energy on them, and Dark Spectre goes on to say to Spiark by saying, hey, I gave you power, I gave you victory over death itself, and in return I asked for one thing, obedience and servitude, and you went behind my back and went to Earth. And Death Ranger's like, Master, I only meant to claim new Rangers to strengthen my army for you. And Dark Spectre just kicks them right in the face by saying, you have no army. Even your body belongs to me, Spiark, and you no longer deserve it. But before Dark Spectre can deliver the finishing blow to the Death Ranger, Rita says, allow me to rectify my mistakes from earlier and take care of this problem. And even Dark Spectre's like, hey, you dare to rob me of this moment? You dare to rob me of my anger? And Rita goes, I only seek your pleasure, as they are not worthy of you or your anger. So once again, Rita is kissing ass to Dark Spectre just to make him happy. So then on the next page, Dark Spectre's like, yeah, whatever, do what you must. And then you have Rita just unleashing, I guess, her magic wand onto the Death Ranger, and all you hear is screaming as the Death Ranger begs for their life and says, I can still help you. And we don't know the fate of this character, so it looks like they get obliterated into nothing, but we don't really get an answer because you just hear screaming. And then on the next page is when the assault on Safe Haven fully begins. So after that, we then cut to outside of Safe Haven, where you have the Hyperforce Sword and the Serpentera Sword crashing down, and Lord Zed is just wrecking shit. And he is just going ham with everything going on. So this gives an opportunity for our other Rangers to sneak in underground, as Lord Zed was the distraction. But Kendall goes on to say by saying, hey, Lord Zed attacked way too early, and Billy replies with, well, he was a distraction. And then Kendall retorts by saying, yeah, he was, but now the Hyperforce Rangers are paying the price because Lord Zed acted too early. But Billy does agree by saying, yeah, you're right, and now the group is outside is getting overwhelmed, and they'll have to pull back. So the next page is even crazier, as you have Coinless Bulk, and he points out saying, we've got a bit of an issue here. And then on the next page, you have 11 fused with Alpha 1, or should I say Alpha 1 fused with 11. And this design is terrifying, as he's like even bigger now. He's got bits of 11 and Alpha 1 in there, and it is just a really cool design. I freaking love this combination between the two different robots. Like, I was wondering what the hell happened to 11, because he never got the hell out of there when Darkest Hour began, and stuff was already going down to look like he might be in trouble. But now we know this guy's fate, and he's become one with Alpha 1, and like I said, his design looks freaking crazy. So Alpha 1 shows up with the Dino Charge Rangers and the Wild Force Rangers and Rocky and Adam, and this is when a full-scale battle takes place between both sides. And while this is going on, you've still got the Hyperforce Rangers and Lord Zed Zord trying to fight off the Thrall, but things aren't working. They need to escape, but Lord Zed refuses, so the Hyperforce Rangers just hightail it out of there with the Lord Zed Zord. So while this is going down, you've got all the fighting going on, and things aren't looking good for our Rangers, as Kimberly soon gets attacked by Mistress Vile, and Dark Spectre shows up as well, saying how convenient that these Rangers came to him. Now, this is where things get even more crazy, because Coinless Bulk jumps in to take the blast for Kimberly, but still both of them get hit, and Kimberly is forced to unmorph due to all the damage she's taking, and she's grabbed by all the thralls, and she calls out to Draken, and as she's calling out to Draken is just walking by the entire battle and says good luck to Kimberly, and Draken just walks towards the Master Arch while this big battle is going on and begins to activate it again. So Draken once again is hightailing it out of the battle. He's caring about only himself again, but he's leaving this dimension. So once again, Draken is running away. Shit hits the fan, and Draken runs away. But is he doing this because he knows that shit is going down and he can't win? Or is he going somewhere where he can find some more allies because he ends up walking through the Master Arch? But the issue ends with Draken walking through the Master Arch, and you see a mysterious figure watching him. Who is that mysterious figure? Well, it's none other than Ranger Slayer in her Draken form, and she is now Dark Specterized, and she's got the whole Dark Spectre motif going on, and she watches Draken leave. So that's where this issue ends. It ends on a crazy cliffhanger like that. And seeing Ranger Slayer at the end of this issue blew my mind because, you know, next year in January, we're going to be getting 116 and the Morphin Masters book, one-shot. And those two issues tie into each other. And now we're getting bits and pieces with everything going on. So now we're going to see how Ranger Slayer survived. But not only that, we'll find out, like, how did she become in control, which you can probably guess with how the Coinless ended, but how did she end up in this world, and how is this all going to tie together into the Morphin Masters one-shot, and what's going to happen moving forward? So, either way, this issue was really solid. I really enjoyed it. Definitely got a kick out of it because it looks like we're getting closer and closer to the end game of Darkest Hour, and I do wonder how this story arc is going to end because we've got a couple more issues to go. I think roughly about 9 more issues to go of Darkest Hour before it comes to an end. So I do wonder if the battle is going to end at like 120, and then after that is going to be sort of like the aftermath of Darkest Hour moving forward. It's hard to say at this point, but yeah, it looks like we're in like endgame territory, but this is the part of the story where our heroes are in deep shit, and I do wonder how they're going to get out of this, because they've walked into the wasp's nest here, and how are they going to get out of this one? I mean, Dark Spectre's there, they've got an entire army on their side, and our heroes are just being overwhelmed, so where is this going to go moving forward, and how are they going to get out of this one, and where the hell did Draken go? Those are the questions I hope we get answers to in next month's issue of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. But overall, what did you think of this issue? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Tell me in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Well, with that said, I'm out of here. Have a wonderful day or night. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys in the next video, and have a happy new year. Peace out, take care, bye. After one long month of waiting, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers has finally returned, and at the start of 2024, we're kicking off with these events happening in MMPR 116. Draken goes into the Morphin Grid, he's confronted by his worst mistake, the rest of the heroes are forced to escape and some not making it back, the Master Arch is destroyed, Dark Spectre is given Keeper's staff that allows him to infect the Morphin Grid even more, Ranger Slayer is freed from Dark Spectre's control, and Draken dies. Well, I think. We'll touch base on this later on in the video. But Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 116 is out now, and Melissa isn't holding back with this issue, as it was an emotional roller coaster, and I was almost tearing up while reading this issue because it got to me really hard when you get to the end of this issue. But like I said, this is an emotional roller coaster, and it is not over yet, as Darkest Hour is still continuing, and this hour directly leads into Power Rangers Unlimited, the Morphin Masters that will be dropping next week. But one thing that was great with this issue is the artwork, because 116 has artwork helmed by Adam Gorham and Marco Renner, along with colouring done by Joanna Lafinti. I do apologise if I butchered your name. And the colouring in this issue is great, because with this issue taking place in the Morphin Grid and the ruins of an important place for a certain character, the tone has this grey and grim colour to it, and it shows the direness of the situation. And when it starts to rain in the Morphin Grid for dramatic effect, the colour gets even more darker, with some angles and shots we see of these characters looking amazing, especially for the expression on their faces, that being an infected Ranger Slayer who has these glowing red eyes and veins cracking across their face, giving that creepiness factor to the character. Alright, let's talk about the main meat and potatoes of MMPR 116, because there is a lot to go over. So this issue is a Draken and Ranger Slayer focused issue, if you couldn't tell, because if you look at the cover, you've got Draken in his classic attire, and behind him are the shots of MMPR Green and MMPR White, with Saba behind them in the center. Now, this cover has a couple of deep meanings you can look into. One, you've got Draken standing in front of the things that was created to make the Lord Draken outfit, the Green Ranger and the White Ranger, being the remnants of those suits. And two, you've got Draken standing there menacingly, and behind him is the hero he could have been if he had those powers. Or three, it's a really cool cover and there's nothing to look too deep into it. But overall, this was a really fantastic cover. And it's crazy to think about, because once again, we're in January, because last year in January, we got the Rita becoming Mistress Vile focused issue, the kickstart the year. And this year in 2024, we're kickstarting the year off with the Draken focused issue and Ranger Slayer that dives deep into Draken and Ranger Slayer's character. So although we do cut to other stuff going on in the Power Rangers universe with this comic in Darkest Hour, this was mostly a Draken themed issue, and I really enjoyed it. So the issue opens up with a flashback in the world of the Coinless right before the events of Shattered Grid, and you have Ranger Slayer telling Draken about a successful mission, and Draken is quick to praise her on a job well done, and Ranger Slayer is ready to accept whatever mission she gets next, because whatever Draken desires, she'll be there to grant it for him. And Draken does say, what if he wants an equal? And Ranger Slayer doesn't really give a response. She's got a shocked expression on her face and doesn't say anything. And Draken just replies with never mind and walks away. And that's where the flashback ends. So one thing that is brought up in this issue is Draken had feelings for Ranger Slayer and wanted Ranger Slayer to love him back, but because he turned her into a mindless slave, he couldn't get that same affection back or the same love back. Now, there has been some theories and speculations in the fandom that some people believe that because Draken turned her into a mindless slave, they might have boinked. Nothing is confirmed yet, but that's a big headcanon and theory amongst the fandom. But the story of Draken and Ranger Slayer is one of mental abuse, you could say, and you still see that abuse or themes of abuse here with Dark Spectre. So that's one of the big themes when it comes to Ranger Slayer and Draken. And the dynamic between these two characters is quite the interesting one as their feelings come out during this fight, because Draken loved Ranger Slayer and he could never get that same love back because he brainwashed her and turned her into a mindless servant. And Draken wanted to see that same love that he shared for her returned, but he never got it in the end. And you have to remember, this is a version of Tommy Oliver that in every timeline, he was the most hated. He was the one that was the loneliest out of all of them. So of course, Draken probably wanted some kind of love, some kind of affection that he never got even when he made her second in command. But during the fight, Draken does acknowledge his actions and knows that it was a mistake to have Ranger Slayer controlled like that, making sure that his final actions are the ones that set her free. Now, we'll get back to Draken in a bit because I want to close the video on that. So let us jump back to Safe Haven, as in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers 115, we saw our heroes being overwhelmed by Dark Spectre, Mistress Vile, Alpha One, plus an army of infected Rangers and Thralls. So our heroes are forced to escape Safe Haven, and not everyone makes it back safely. The Rangers being left behind after this giant battle is Coinless Bulk, Scorpina, Taylor, and Kia. Now, you do see a panel of Yale, Bulk, and Scorpina thrown in a cell with Alpha One taunting them by telling them Yale to play nice with each other and the other Rangers, but seeing the angle of these characters is hard to see if they're infected with Dark Spectre's influence, but I'm guessing they probably were infected with the precautions that Dark Spectre and Mistress Vile have been taking during this battle. Now, Kia wasn't really captured. I'm guessing she snuck off to do her own thing during the chaos of everything that was going on, and what she does is it blows up the Master Arch. Now, with both Master Arches being destroyed, unless there's a third one out there, I do wonder how Ranger Slayer will be returning back to this world, because the Master Arches were the keys between the Power Rangers universes and the dimensions and everything in between. And with the Master Arch destroyed, I do wonder how they're going to return back. But we've also got the Hyperforce Rangers and their ship that can travel through space and time, so I do get the feeling with the brains of Billy, Kendall, and the Phantom Ranger, they might think of something. What that is, I've got no idea, but with one of the covers of Billy seemingly jumping into the Morphin Grid and reaching out to Ranger Slayer, I get the feeling that we've got something that will be happening later down the line that is teasing the events of what's to come with that cover. So you never know. So we'll have to wait and see, because we're on issue 116 and I believe that's the cover for 118. So we've got a couple of months away before we find out what that cover actually means. So because our heroes escaped and the Master Arch was destroyed, this angers Dark Spectre and he takes his anger out on Rita once again. And here you see that form of abuse used on Rita that she gets from Dark Spectre, because she's cowering and she's curled up into a ball, and when Dark Spectre questions what use does she have due to all her failures, you can see the fear on her eyes as she's looking up at Dark Spectre. But Rita once again quickly tries to amend the situation by revealing that she's breached the arch using the Morphin Grid energy she's got in her body and transferred some of that power into Keeper's staff, and she gives that staff to Dark Spectre. So once again, whenever Rita fails Dark Spectre, she gets shouted, she gets told off, she quickly tries amending that situation and apologizing to make sure that she doesn't get killed off. And I get the feeling that she's only going to get so many chances until Dark Spectre kills her or finds no use for her anymore. So it's only a matter of time before we see Dark Spectre getting rid of Rita, and she realizes that the mistake that she's made while serving under him. But once Dark Spectre receives his new staff, we do get this awesome 2-page spread of all these different Rangers across the Morphin Grid, and in the center of everything you've got our heroes reacting to what's been recently happening. And this is a powerful 2-page spread because in the middle you've got Lord Zed lashing out at the Hyperforce Rangers. Below them you've got what I mentioned earlier of some of the Rangers in their prison cells and Alpha 1 taunting them. Below them you've got Trinies hugging the mainline Trini, promising Queenless Trini that they'll get the others back, while Zack and Billy are watching with concerned looks on their faces. And the final panel is Kimberly on her hands and knees, screaming, sobbing, and crying because everything that went wrong in the situation got 100 times worse and went wrong in so many ways. Now, around the center of these panels, we see several different Ranger teams. On the left, you've got Dino Fury, Mega Force, and Mystic Force. And then on the other side, you've got Jungle Fury, Lost Galaxy, and Time Force. Now, I don't know if these characters will be playing a role in the story, but I really hope they do. But I feel like this is to show the power that Dark Spectre has with all the timelines he can infect with his brand new staff. And all these teams are bangers, and I love them, and I really do hope they appear in the comics. Like, can you imagine if Time Force shows up, like Jen comes back into the comic again like she did in Shattered Grid, or we see Dino Fury or Lost Galaxy? Can you imagine getting a post-Lost Galaxy Corone confronting Dark Spectre? That would be really cool to see. Now, going back to the Draken and Ranger Slayer stuff, I've talked about the emotional weight of this fight, but I really need to talk about the physicalness of this fight. But one thing I need to talk about, and I haven't brushed up upon it in the review/recap, that is where this fight takes place within the Morphin Grid, as the Morphin Grid manifests the city or the ruins, and this area has some importance to Draken, as it's where Rita Repulsa found him and gave him the name Draken. So that's what we get in this issue. Now, the physicalness of this fight is great because it is brutal. There's a scene where Draken and Ranger Slayer cross blades as they clash, but then Ranger Slayer just hits Draken with a headbutt to the face with enough impact to break his helmet. And if there's one thing that I love in Sentai, Rider, or Power Rangers, it's battle damaged helmets. And seeing Draken having his battle damaged helmet here, you can tell that shit is getting real. But the battle between Draken and Ranger Slayer ends with them delivering one last blow at each other, where Ranger Slayer is set free from Dark Spectre's control. But Draken, well, he might be dead, but he gives Ranger Slayer one last mission to find the Morphin Masters and not to let the enemy win, as he hands Ranger Slayer his power coin and it soon begins to glow in her hands. And this is where the issue ends, and it's going to tie directly into Power Rangers Unlimited, the Morphin Master. So that's where we end off with 116. Alright, so is Draken dead? That is the big question here. Now, this is comics and no one stays dead forever in comics, but you have to keep in mind a few key factors here. When we see Draken in the Morphin Grid at the start of the issue, he starts narrating his life by saying who he is, what he's done, how he's been a king, a god, a murderer. He's done all of these things, and if he could be them again. But he also says that he's probably run out of chances. And he narrates this same dialogue at the start of the issue and near the end of the issue when he goes to deliver the final blow to Ranger Slayer. So that to me sounds like the words of someone who's accepted their fate and they're ready to die. Now, I know a lot of people have been mixed about Draken post Shattered Grid, but if you've been reading the comics since the beginning to now, Draken has had an entire character arc, and if the comics are ending with Darkest Hour like a lot of people are speculating, then I can understand if Melissa wants to end Draken's story here. And Draken dying in the Morphin Grid, the one thing that he tried to take over all those years ago, and then getting some kind of redemption in the Morphin Grid is kind of symbolic in a way, because Shattered Grid ended with Draken wanting a lonesome death and chose to stay behind, and here he's using his last dying breath to save someone he cared about. Now, with Ranger Slayer getting Draken's power coin, could we see her getting a new form? Possibly. I would love to see that, but we're going to have to wait a couple of issues to see if anything comes from that with Kimberly or Ranger Slayer inheriting Draken's power coin. Hopefully they do something with that, with Ranger Slayer holding onto Draken's old power coin. But overall, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers 116 was another fantastic issue. Melissa has been killing it. This issue was like I said, it was an emotional roller coaster. I was not expecting a Draken story that hit me in the gut so much when we got to the closing pages of this issue, because this was Draken coming into terms with his past as it came back to haunt him, and he's confronting that, and his dying moments is him trying to fix one of his mistakes. So this issue it was quite the emotional roller coaster. Like I said, this issue will probably make you sob, probably make you cry, or make you feel something once you're done reading it. And Melissa hit those emotional points when reading this issue, and I can't wait to see where it's going to go next. Is Draken alive? Is Draken dead? What is Ranger Slayer going to find in the Power Rangers Unlimited book? And where do we go from here with the rescue mission being a complete failure? So we'll have to go from there and see what happens. But anyway, guys, what did you think of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers 116? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Tell me in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. With that said, I'm out of here. Have a wonderful day or night, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out. Take care. Bye. So it's finally here, Power Rangers Unlimited The Morphin Masters, written by Ryan Parrott and Rachel Wagner. And I just want to get this out here. I am so happy to see Ryan Parrott return the Power Ranger comics. It seems like forever since we last saw him at the helm of one of these Power Ranger comics, but it's so cool to see him return with Rachel to do a Ranger Slayer story, because Ranger Slayer is Ryan's baby, and there's a lot to unpack with this issue that we're going to go over in this video. Now, Power Rangers Unlimited The Morphin Master picks up right after where MMPR 116 left off on, where Draken sacrificed his life to free an enslaved Ranger Slayer. So we might as well call this video MMPR 116.9 review, but I don't think the YouTube algorithm or the audience would like that, so we'll have to call it The Morphin Masters for now. So this one-shot has future Kimberly going on a journey to find the Morphin Masters, as they're probably the only ones who can fix this situation going on right now with Dark Spectre. Spoilers, they're not. But Ranger Slayer is joined by the Pink Emissary, who is later to reveal to be Alila from Power Rangers universe. So this book does confirm and clears up that the characters from Power Rangers universe did become the emissaries, as they are called out by name and they call each other old friends during some of the fight scenes. And although Power Rangers universe is kind of a mess with how that story ended, I'm glad that this book does add concrete evidence that those Squadron Rangers did become the emissaries, because the ending for Power Rangers universe, I've said this several times on the channel and I won't go on another tangent before, that ending's a mess. That ending is a huge mess, and it's cool to see stuff from that book slowly get cleaned up and explained better as the mainline comics continue. And this story does add some depth and some emotional weight to those characters as they reveal how they feel about their position and their duties to the Morphin Grid, and how they felt shackled and gave everything to the Morphin Masters, forced to watch all these horrible events unfold in the Power Rangers universe and unable to do a single thing about that. And what I'm referring to is the whole struggle between the Morphin Grid, the balance between good and evil, as one can't exist without the other. And the emissaries go on to say that the Morphin Masters value that balance of the Morphin Grid over innocent lives, and That does make sense because, a lot of bad stuff does happen in the Power Rangers universe, and we never see the emissaries or the Morphin Masters show up to fix everything because they're meant to be observers, they're meant to be watchers. So these emissaries, these Morphin Masters, they have to watch all this stuff go down because they can't really interfere until, stuff that happens in Dino Fury and Cosmic Fury where they have to get involved, but that's a story for another day. And although they're corrupted by Dark Spectre, I get the feeling this is how they truly feel, because Pink at the end of the comic soon conveys the same feelings. And the one thing I found to be really cool as well is we get to see the emissaries fight, because for the longest time they've just sat back and they've not got involved in much of the conflict. And here we see them changing between the different Ranger forms in the fights, and when they change forms, they take on the weapons that correspond with that Ranger. And I feel like that was a really nice touch because you have all these different panels of all these different emissaries taking on different Ranger forms, and when they're getting involved in the fight, you see them holding on to like that weapon that represents that certain Ranger, and that was really cool to see. I think that was a really nice touch. So it's cool to see the emissaries actually finally fighting and getting involved in some conflict for once. But seeing how they're corrupted by Dark Spectre makes you wonder how that even happened, because the first one we see is the Blue Emissary, a character we haven't seen since the finale of the Eltarian War, and the last thing they said they were going to do was set out and find the other emissaries. But I did like the reveal of Blue being corrupt, because we have this moment where Ranger Slayer and the Pink Emissary enter this church-like structure, and here we meet Coinless Billy, or we're think to make to believe that it is Coinless Billy, who has been a part of the Morphin Grid ever since his death. And this version of Coinless Billy wants Ranger Slayer to hand over the power coin, because he tries explaining that the Morphin Masters are in a place that not too many people can enter. And the Pink Emissary, they want to hand over the coin, they want to be like, alright, journey over, job well done, GG. But Future Kim is quick to catch on and tells the Coinless Billy they'll hand it over if they can guess what their favourite colour is, and it's not pink. And this is quick to lure out the Blue Emissary. Now, with the emissaries that do appear in this comic, we've got green, we've got black, and we've got blue. And all of them die in this issue, including Pink. So it does make me wonder, where are the other emissaries, and are they corrupted as well? Because the only ones we don't see in this issue is red and yellow. So I do wonder where they are, if they're okay, if they're safe. And that's a question that's on my mind. And because we do have several emissaries getting killed in this issue, does that mean the Imperials can be revived once again? So that question is on my mind as well, because that was set up ages ago. If a emissary dies, that means an Imperial can be resurrected. Now, during the scene when Ranger Slayer and the Pink Emissary talk to the imposter Coinless Billy, there's an interesting name that gets brought up, and that is the Illumination. Who is the Illumination? Well, according to the Blue Emissary, they are 6 elders, the wisest of the Morphin Masters. There's 6 of them. Most of those 6 take up the main colours of the Power Ranger team we know from Mighty Morphin, that being pink, yellow, red, green, black, and blue. Much like the Morphin Masters we saw in Dino Fury and Cosmic Fury. Now, we do meet 6 Morphin Masters at the end of this issue, but they don't have much colour to them. They're very grey, they just have like bland colours. So does that mean the colour's been sucked out of them? Or is it because they've been in the heart of the grid for so long they kind of lost their colours? Or is there something higher above than the Morphin Masters that we meet in this issue? Because it's never addressed if they are the Illumination or not. I assume they are, but that isn't really cleared up in this issue. So does that mean there's something higher than the Morphin Masters we saw in this issue? So I do wonder if we'll actually meet up with the Illumination again later down the line in Darkest Hour. And I don't want to call the Pink Emissary a useless character in this one-shot, because they do mention as soon as they appear they're meant to be a guide. They're meant to help Ranger Slayer. They can't really give them the answers, and they don't really get involved in any of the conflict. But Ranger Slayer does question, hey, my universe is hell. I've been through hell. You've never appeared, you've never done anything to help. So why are you helping me now? And They do have this nice heart-to-heart talk where Kimberly does make this big speech about jumping from one lily pad to another, and when we see Ranger Slayer confronting the green and black emissaries in this book, that's when the pink emissary gets involved and says, I was tired of jumping from lily pad to lily pad as well. Although they get involved with the conflict, this eventually does lead to their death, but also their corruption. And we get this scene where Ranger Slayer and the pink emissary are having this fight, and Ranger Slayer gives this big speech in the fight, and when the fight comes to a close, you have Ranger Slayer holding the pink emissary in their arms with this big warm embrace, and Ranger Slayer says, sometimes meeting your guardian angel doesn't always lead to a happy ending. And one thing I love about that panel is because as Kimberly is holding the pink emissary in her arms, on that same panel where she talks about guardian angels, you see the pink emissary transformed as Megaforce Pink. And if you've seen Ghost Sager and how they're meant to be angels, that puts the cherry on top with that scene because of the symbolism right there. And I really enjoyed the fight between Ranger Slayer and the Pink Emissary because, like I said, you've got Pink Emissary transforming into all these different Ranger forms and using all those iconic Ranger weapons, but then you've also got Ranger Slayer who's having this inner monologue during the fight, and by saying that this whole moment, this was a test to see if she's ready for everything to come that's later down the line. So this was like a really fantastic character moment for Ranger Slayer because she knows that even after this, and if she can't win here, she's not ready for the things that are about to come later. Alright, let's finally talk about the Morphin Masters, what this book is named after. So we finally get to see the Morphin Masters in this book, and I think, don't quote me on this, I think this is the first mainline comic appearance of the Morphin Masters outside of narration or flashbacks. And what we got was completely unexpected because when we first meet them, they say, we've been expecting you. And on the next panel, they're soon given the power coin. And when I thought once they were given the power coin, I was thinking, oh cool, the journey has finally come to an end. Hopefully the Morphin Masters can make this thing right, get a new power up, give them some advice, maybe give some hints or something like that. But nope. What we get is one of them trying to eat the power coin. And this is the first sign of something isn't right here. And I was thinking, oh no, this is another dupe. They're actually corrupted. This could be like an evil sent by Dark Spectre as well. But they soon tell Kimberly and Alila that dinner is almost ready. So the Morphin Masters soon sit down, ready to eat, and you notice that there is no food. They're having imaginary dinner. Now, this is because they've lost themselves to the grid, apparently, according to the Pink Emissary. So I guess that's where their sanity went for being in this area for so long. But there's even a moment at the end of this issue where the Pink Emissary dies, and they just say, oh, they're sleeping. Hopefully they can wake up soon and they can eat once again. So yeah, this was very unexpected what I thought we'd be getting when it came to the Morphin Masters in this comic. Like I said, I thought they would deliver some wisdom, they'd be here to help, we'd possibly see Zato, but nope, none of that. Just a bunch of gods who have lost their mind and they're having fake imaginary dinner. So this shows that even in the comics, the Morphin Masters are just as useless here as they are in Dino and Cosmic Fury. So Ranger Slayer is forced to kill the Pink Emissary, but the Pink Emissary has faith that even without the Morphin Masters, she will be able to fix this situation and save the entire universe. So while this is going on, Ranger Slayer is narrating everything and she's walking away. And on the last few pages, she has this line to say, and it's a really cool line. She says, sometimes a lifetime of training means your story is just beginning, because it's not the Morphin Masters who will save us. It's up to us to save ourselves. And as she's walking down the hallway, you can probably hear some badass epic music playing, and that's where the issue ends. So yeah, Power Rangers Unlimited, the Morphin Masters. I was not expecting to have this when I started reading this issue, but I really freaking enjoyed it. Like, this was a fantastic issue, hands down, no doubt about it. Once again, Ryan managed to kill it, and knock it out of the park with Rachel as well. So this was a great issue from start to finish because it's Ranger Slayer going on this journey of self-discovery, but not only that, she's no longer using the sort of power bow of darkness. MV comic, it gets snapped in two, and now it's sort of turned into these daggers of darkness, these swords of darkness, you can say, with how it's shaped, and it looks really cool as well. I really do like how the bow is now snapped off and she's got kind of a new weapon, which makes her own unique ranger in a way, where she's not just like another version of Kimberly with an evil bow, she's now got her own unique weapon as well. So I do wonder where the story is going to go from here, because like I said, the Morphin Masters, they didn't help at all. Ranger Slayer is still in the Morphin Grid, and the Morphin Grid is still a very dangerous place if we've got corrupted adversaries running around, and we've also got like spirit animals shaped like scorpions and lions and bears and stuff like that. So I do wonder what is going to happen next moving forward, because one of the covers does have Billy diving into the Morphin Grid to save her, so I do wonder how she's going to get out. But I do wonder, where does the story go from here if the Morphin Masters aren't able to help our heroes? Because like Kimberly said, it's up to us to save ourselves. We can't rely on these gods and these deities. We've got to do it ourselves. So this is up to the Rangers, the good fight themselves, and that's something that I really do like. So like I said, this was a fantastic issue. Amazing artwork, amazing writing, really great storytelling, and it's so cool to see Ryan back once again. So, with that said, I think I'm going to bring this video to a close. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and don't forget to turn on notifications, all that good stuff you usually hear from your YouTuber at the end of a video or the start of the video. So I'll see you guys later. Peace out, take care, and bye. Okay, it's finally here. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 117 has finally dropped, and once again, like I say every month, Melissa is killing it with this story arc. She is knocking it out of the park, and once again, this was another solid issue. Now, earlier on in the month, I covered on the channel that we know when Darkest Hour is going to end, and it's going to be ending roughly about in August. And it's only a matter of time before those press solicitations drop, which we'll probably be getting within the next couple of months, closer to when August rolls around. But after reading 117 several times, we are definitely getting closer to the end game of Darkest Hour, and we're going to be going over that in this video. So get ready, because Mighty Morphin Power Rangers 117 is... So the issue opens up with the planet Aquitar, which is really cool to see, because in Power Rangers history, they've never actually shown Aquitar properly, because they've shown it in the show, but it's always been under this weird underwater effect or filter, or on the viewing globe, or they'll have some weird stock image or something from the Sentai that say that's Aquitar, but we've never seen what the planet actually looks like on the planet itself. And what we get with the artwork here, I really do enjoy the design of Aquitar, where we get to see the underwater design, but not only that, the people of Aquitar and what the land of Aquitar actually looks like. So the artwork is really solid here when we get to see what the planet of Aquitar looks like. Alright, so I went on my tangent about Aquitar. So the issue opens up with Aquitar being invaded by Dark Spectre and his forces, and of course, with his new enhanced powers, the alien rangers didn't stand a chance and they're quickly converted. But one thing that is happening is, while this is going on, you've got Dark Spectre narrating and monologuing about rangers and how whenever they fight, they always respond with morphing, and now that has been taken away from them, and that just shows what power level Dark Spectre is on right now, because rangers, they always respond with morphing. When they get into a fight, they morph. And now when they morph, that's been taken away and they get turned into his thralls, his henchmen. So it shows how dire the situation is right now with how powerful Dark Spectre has become. So the alien Rangers are captured and Aquitar has been taken over, and you've got Dark Spectre gloating about his brand new powers and how powerful he's become, and Rita chimes in by saying that her spell helped, and Dark Spectre responds with, well, you didn't do fucking shit. Well, he doesn't say it like that, but he views that her spell wasn't needed because he's got all of his raw power and he's able to do it by himself, and if Rita gets in his way, well, he can easily dispose of her whenever he wants because he's got all this power now. So Dark Spectre dips and goes back into the portal, probably to conquer more Ranger worlds. After that, we then have this back and forth between Alpha 11 and Rita. Yep, that's what we're calling this weird fusion between Alpha 1 and 11. But not for long, don't worry, you probably won't be calling it that by the end of this issue. So Rita and Alpha 11 have this conversation where Alpha 11 says to Rita that Dark Spectre forgets that how much of this is her doing. And Alpha 11 is right about that because Rita is the one who found him a vessel, found Dark Spectre a vessel, the one that summoned Dark Spectre into this world. But not only that, she was gathering allies along the way. But Rita just casually shakes it off by saying, well, this is Dark Spectre's right and privilege, so he deserves to treat her like shit, which is weird that she's putting him over like that because he's this all-powerful being. But Alpha 11 goes on to say that a master that does not appreciate the ones in their service does not deserve them, and goes on to say that he serves Rita and not Dark Spectre. But Rita tries to assure him that she hasn't forgotten about their purpose and Zordon will eventually receive justice. Alright, so on the next few pages, things go in a direction that I did not see coming. So because Earth doesn't have much lines of defenses left, Taylor decides that she's going to train the people of Angel Grove and Safe Haven through some boot camp training, which is really cool because of Taylor's background being in the military. And one moment I do like about this scene is a back and forth that she has with Jason, where Taylor is questioning if these random civilians do have a chance at stopping this army that Dark Spectre is bringing. And Jason responds with that the odds probably aren't in their favor, but the biggest strength is humanity, and even if there is no chance, they'll never stop trying, which gave me flashbacks earlier on to Berserk, where Guts gives that big speech about humans and how they'll fight to survive. This is pretty much the same thing here. So Taylor, along with Jason and a couple of other Rangers, enter the Hollow training program to fight a monster along with a bunch of Thrall putties. And here you have the Rangers trying to fight off the monster, while the civilians are doing their best to sort of chime in and help along as well. And while this is all going on, you've got Bulk and Skull getting into typical Bulk and Skull shenanigans, where they're trying to save a baby and they're just scrambling around trying to see if they're in too deep or not about this situation. But while they're scrambling around, Jason comes in and saves them and gives them a thumbs up and gives them some encouragement by telling them that they're doing great. And this motivates them a little bit more to keep going as well. So I do wonder how Bulk and Skull are going to fare when the big final battle actually comes to Earth and they get involved, because even though they did have that comedic moment where they're trying to save a baby and they're trying to sing lullabies to it and stuff like that, they get it to calm down, and even though it's just a hologram training, they are doing the bare minimum by getting civilians to safety and making sure that they're alright, even though they're not fighting the monsters. So they're still helping, which is cool to see. So while this is all going on, you've got Kendall, Billy, the Phantom Ranger, and Terrana working on the power eggs, and finally, they manage to open up the power eggs and we get to see what's inside of them. And what we get is not dinosaurs, not a Zord, we get the Morphin Grid in the form of a crystal, which is pretty cool within itself. I was not expecting that to be inside of it. And what they decide to do with this power is use the crystal with the arch to make a shield around the Earth, and we'll see that come into play very, very soon. After that, we then cut to the Y-79 galaxy, and we've got Dark Spectre fighting none other than the Psycho Rangers, and he is wrecking their shit, which is really interesting because he's coming face to face with something that eventually becomes his downfall, and that is pointed out to him on this page. Now, because they're Rangers, he wants them to serve them, but Rita chimes in by saying that the Psycho Rangers probably isn't a good idea because of how unpredictable they are, and even under his control, they probably won't listen. But Dark Spectre just tells her to shut up because he doesn't want her opinion. And Dark Spectre tries sending the Psycho Rangers to Earth, but that doesn't work thanks to the new shield around Earth stopping them from Dark Spectre invading, which is kind of a good thing because if the Psycho Rangers went to Earth, that would have been game over for a lot of Rangers. I don't know what Rangers probably would be able to hold their own against the Psycho Rangers. There's only been a couple that have managed to hold their own, but I don't think that the Mighty Morphin team and probably the Omega Rangers would have stood a chance against the Psycho Rangers with how powerful they are and how they adapt to the battlefield and stuff like that when fighting the Rangers. So Earth got kind of lucky there. Alright, so back on Earth, they've got the shields up, and that will keep them safe from Dark Spectre for now. But Zordon has a request for the Hyperforce Rangers to use their ship, and the next few pages are freaking crazy. I loved these next few pages leading to the end of the issue. So the next few pages, we've got the Hyperforce Rangers traveling through space and time to gather allies. First up, we see Joe going to the Envoy Galaxy, where he rescues Zeo Ranger Gold and the Blue Centurion. Now, which Gold Ranger is it? Is it Jason? Is it Trey? Well, I'll let you guys debate that in the comment section, but I think it's Trey. It's how they're speaking to one another, and I don't think Jason would call the Blue Centurion his friend and to stand tall. It doesn't sound like Jason would say, in my opinion, so I think this is Trey. But if it is Jason, that'd be really cool. You get to see an older Jason interacting with a younger version of, oh no, I don't say too old because Jason was only a couple years older than his younger self during the Mighty Morphin days, but I think it's Trey. I honestly think it's Trey. My money's on Trey. Next page we go to Corinth and we have Dr. K along with Gem and Gemma being rescued. Then we go to Miranoi and we have Jack rescuing the Magna Defender and the Lost Galaxy Pink Ranger. Now this is a tricky one because we don't know who it is here. We don't even know with how they're speaking, it's hard to see who it is here. Is this Mike? Is this the Magna Defender? Is this Corone? Is this Kendricks? No idea. We're gonna have to wait until they take off their helmets to find out who it actually is, to find out is this, like, which Lost Galaxy Ranger is this and which reincarnation of the Magna Defender this is. So we've got a mystery on our hands right now with trying to figure out who this is. And then we've got this page to talk about. I feel like this one is going to pop people because of the interactions we can get. So on the final rescue mission page, we cut to Reefside in the future, and we have Dino Thunder Tommy and Trent fighting off SBD and AIDS Squad. So we've got future Tommy here, and there are so many possibilities that can happen here. We can see him interact with his old team, we can see him interact with his old flame Kimberly, and even interact with his young self here. I don't know if Melissa has that planned, but seeing older Tommy here, like Dino Thunder Tommy here, I am so curious if they're actually going to do something with this later down the line within the next couple of issues, because there is so much banter and so much interactions we can get with older Tommy, like going to the past and like interacting with like Angel Grove in the past. Like there are so many possibilities here that can happen right now with Dino Thunder Tommy showing up. Like I'm hoping that Melissa had something planned with this. Like fingers crossed we have like Dino Thunder Tommy interacting with like his MMPR self or his MMPR counterpart or something like that. Oh my god, like I'm lost for words, right? Like I have no idea what Melissa has planned for this, but seeing Dino Thunder Tommy here, that popped me when I scrolled down and turned the page. So after all of that, we then cut back to Safe Haven, and we have Dark Spectre, who is pissed off, as usual, at Rita for her failures. And he's really pissed off here because even Rita can tell. Because props to the artist here, props to the artist for the attention of detail here for this page and panel, but special props to the artist for the entire issue. Like, they did a really good job here, because when Rita's getting told off by Dark Spectre and she's on her knees groveling here, you can literally see tears about to come out of her eyes. Like, she knows that she's failed and she might die here, but Dark Spectre soon tosses the remains and the scraps of Alpha 11 in front of her, and this has Rita shocked. And I know that seems weird to a lot of people, but Alpha 1 and Rita at the time seemed to relate relate to one another when they first met, and Alpha 1 did have complete loyalty to her. So the reason why we're seeing Alpha 1 Scrapsia or Alpha 11 Scrapsia in front of Rita is because Dark Spectre hears everything, and of course he demands complete loyalty, and this is where he gives Rita her final warning by saying next time she won't be so lucky. So after that, we then come back to Earth again, where Billy and the Phantom Ranger are having a really nice heart-to-heart talk, or a heart-to-chest Ruby talk. But the Phantom Ranger does tell Billy that he's a brilliant young man, and he will change the worlds, and he already has done that. But he should learn from his mistakes, and some actions are never worth the risk. And this is all because of the Phantom Ranger's guilt of creating the Master Arch and what it's brought to this world with Dark Spectre being in there. So it's a really nice moment between the two of them. So after that, after their nice little heart-to-heart talk, the Master Arch finally opens up, and none other than Ranger Slayer comes out with the White Light Power Coin. And that was really quick because I didn't expect that she'd return so soon. I thought it'd be like another issue or two before she'd actually return. But yeah, Ranger Slayer is back with the power coin that will also change the tides in this battle. So it's cool that she's back already. That's really great. They've got more allies together, and not only that, she's got a key factor to that being the power coin that's going to change the tides in battle. So thank goodness that the Morphin Masters didn't eat it earlier on in Power Rangers Unlimited, the Morphin Masters. Thank goodness they didn't snack on it, and Ranger Slayer was able to get it back. Alright, so on the final 2 pages, you have Rita confronting Tommy while he's in his prison cell, asking him, is redemption possible for anyone? Because Tommy's legacy was born of evil and eventually he turned good. And Tommy actually gives Rita a response. He tells her that redemption is always possible, but it has to begin with their intentions and mercy, something that Dark Spectre doesn't understand. And on the final page, you have Rita smiling at Tommy's response and agrees with him, saying that she claims that she will no longer serve a master, and while she frees Tommy, she undoes his shackles and say that Tommy will serve her own interests quite nicely. And Tommy's got a confused look on his face, much like I had on my face when I got to the end of this final page. And that pretty much wraps up Mighty Morphin Power Rangers 117. So yeah, that was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers 117, and overall, like I said at the start of the video, this was another solid issue, and Melissa is still knocking it out of the park as we get closer and closer to the finale of Darkest Hour, which will be ending within 6 months, I believe. So we've got a couple more issues to go with Darkest Hour before we get to the big climactic finale, but this issue definitely does set up the final act and the structure of Darkest Hour as we get closer and closer to the end game. Like, this issue had a lot going for it. Like, we had Taylor and Jason training civilians if the battle does come to them. You had the death of Alpha 11 or Alpha 1 because, you know, he wasn't loyal to Dark Spectre, so Dark Spectre disposed of him. You've got everyone gathering allies for this big final battle, as they know that Earth is the new safe haven where people can go where they won't be corrupted from Dark Spectre's influence. But not only that, you've got Rita switching sides, it looks like, where she no longer wants to serve Dark Spectre, so she finally came around. Now, Rita is definitely probably going to go back to being Rita at the end of this issue. She's Mistress Vile, but she's going to go back to being, like, you know, evil Rita that we had in Mighty Morphin, where she has to shackle down with Lord Zed after at the end of all of this. And this is sort of like in line with what Rita's mother did say all those issues ago, where Rita does have good in her heart and she can make good decisions, or she's bound for goodness because she does become Mystic Mother in the end. But again, this is Rita switching sides, which is another swerveball that I did not see coming, and I didn't see it going in this direction, where she would actually jump ship so soon within the issue. I thought she'd sort of switch sides near the finale, but she does say that she's going to serve her own interests and not Dark Spectre's interests, so I am curious to see where she's going to go from here, and will she join the Rangers, or will she just be doing her own thing in the shadows that will lead closer and closer to the big finale? But either way, this was a really fantastic issue, and I can't wait to see where it's going to go moving forward. So What did you guys think of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers 117? Tell me in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. With that said, I'm out of here. Have a wonderful day or night, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out. Take care. Bye. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 118 is out now. Darkest Hour continues, and this story arc is far from over, guys, because we've got a good 5 months left of this story arc, and every month I keep saying, looks like things are wrapping up, guys, looks like things are getting crazy, and of course, that happens here. But the best way to describe this issue, that it's the end of an act, and next month in issue 119, we'll be starting the third act, that is going to be leading into the grand finale that we'll be getting in August for Darkest Hour. Because with this issue, we get some things resolved, some storylines resolved, like Tommy finally reuniting with his team, Rita rebelling against Dark Spectre, and we see where that's going to take her later down the line. But not only that, the ending of this issue is definitely going to be setting up some conflict for our heroes, and I do wonder how they're going to be dealing with that later down the line as we get closer and closer to the finale of Darkest Hour. So, without any further delays, let's talk about 118 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, because Melissa is cooking with this issue. So the issue opens up with a barrier being placed around the Moon Palace, and Lord Zed has allied with the Rangers. So up here on the Moon Palace, we've got Lord Zed, Trini, Coinless Trini, and down below we've got Zack holding his own with a bunch of putties. And I really do enjoy the interactions we have between the two Trinis on these couple of pages, because it confirms that Coinless Trini and Scorbina had some kind of relationship going on, which you can tell that the signs were there with the dialogue and how they interacted. I mean, one of the signs is when Coinless Trini gives Billy a hug and Kia teases Scorbina that she looks a little bit jealous there, or she looks a little bit green, which was kind of funny when you go back and see it, because yeah, those signs are still there, and probably more signs are still there when you go back and try and find them. But I also enjoyed Coinless Trini telling Omega Trini that she should tell Zack how she feels, because you never know before it's too late. So after that, it comes back to the command center, and Ranger Slayer is trying to explain what happened in the Morphin Masters one-shot, where the adversaries were corrupt, the Morphin Masters were messed up in the head, and the Phantom Ranger doesn't believe her. So you've got this one scene where they get up in each other's faces, and they almost start fighting because they've both been corrupted, so they both kind of don't believe each other. And one of the things that Ranger Slayer points out here, and I really do like this attention to detail, is that the Phantom Ranger is coated in the darkness. Now, if you don't know what that means, in Power Rangers universe, the Phantom Ranger used to be called the Morphinaut, where he was white instead of black. And then near the end of Power Rangers universe, spoilers if you haven't read it, is that he gets corrupted by Dark Spectre, and that's why he's got his famous Phantom Ranger black suit that we all know and love. So I really do like that that was brought up before the two start throwing down. But Zordon is quick to break them up, and they have to discuss what their next plan is. And as they're trying to figure out what their next plan of attack is, the viewing globe soon goes off, and we soon see Mistress Vile and Tommy teaming up as they join the battle on the moon, which is really cool to see within itself, because you've got Tommy Oliver teaming up with the person who made him a ranger in the first place. Of course, he was captured and brainwashed, but now he's fighting side by side with the exact same person who made him a ranger, which is really cool to see. I do like that moment we get in the comic where you have Tommy and Rita fighting side by side. So Dark Spectre tags along and brings along Rocky, Adam, and Chloe's dad. Angel, I think he called himself one time. I don't know. Mr. Ash, and Mr. Ashford will call him. But what's a really cool attention to detail about Chloe's dad is that because he's tagged along and he's a normal human being, he's got on a spacesuit to help breathe on the moon, because at the end of the day, he's just a normal dude. So I really do like that attention to detail that the artist and Melissa put on there, because he's a normal human being. He can't breathe in space without a ranger suit because he's not an evil space alien or he's got a ranger suit on. So he's going to have the extra protection to breathe on the moon. After that, we then cut away to Promethea and you've got Bulk and Skull training and they overhear that Eltar has fallen as they haven't heard from Candace. So this puts Skull in a down mood, and I really do like this moment for Skull because he says that he doesn't like sitting around here and doing nothing while someone who he cares about might be in danger or they might be dead. And Jason, overhearing this conversation, walks over to the two and says that he believes that they'd make great Power Rangers, which is kind of funny because there was that one-shot annual where they do become Rangers, and although it's a gag comic, you do see some heroic tendencies being shown for Bulk and Skull here, and this is sowing the seeds for what we'd later see later down the line in Power Rangers in Space and Countdown to Destruction. So I really hope that we do get a Skull and Candace reunion later down the line in this story arc. I get the feeling we'll probably see it in the finale of Darkest Hour, but I'm still hankering for a Candace and Skull reunion because those two made a really good couple. So after that, we then come back to the Moon Palace and Ranger Slayer joins the battle. And I really do like the page where Ranger Slayer joins because you've got this spaceship flying over the Moon Palace and this silhouette comes out of it, and the silhouette kind of looks like a bad guy because it's this weird, spooky, creepy looking silhouette that's sort of slowly descending upon our heroes so they don't know if it's another enemy joining the battle. But no, it's Ranger Slayer. And I do like how she cracks a joke about how the landing was a little bit rough and that actually hurt her. I really enjoyed that moment, but others are quick to comment on how she's alive, she's no longer corrupt, so that's good to see. But again, Ranger Slayer is just full of like the banter, full of the wits, where she sees Tommy outside the barrier and she's like, "What are you doing outside of the barrier?" And Tommy's like, "The what now?" And she just responds by kicking him back into the barrier to make sure that he's safe, because if Tommy gets forced out of demorphing, then he could possibly get corrupted if he's outside of the barrier. So Ranger Slayer, quick to sort him out and kick him inside the barrier. So our heroes go back inside the barrier, but the one person who's not inside the barrier is Rita, and she is getting her ass handed to her by Dark Spectre, Adam, and Rocky. And to be honest, Rita Repulsa never really stood a chance against Dark Spectre. She's powerful, but she's not powerful to deal with Dark Spectre. But when Dark Spectre arrives to sort of like wreck her shit when she goes to the Moon Palace, one thing that I really do like what Rita says to Dark Spectre is says, "Everything I've given you, I'll pay back in tenfold, and let's see how you thrive without my help." So I really do like how she's fully letting go of Dark Spectre and she's ready to ditch him and betray him, which is something that we knew that would be happening later down the line, but now we get to see how it's happening. But like I said, Rita is getting her ass kicked by Dark Spectre, and it almost looks like the end for her. She's about to get executed by Dark Spectre. Her little helmet piece falls off, and you see her long hair, which is a really cool, nice attention to detail. Like, I really do like seeing Rita without the headpiece on, and we get to see her hair because, you know, she always had that on in the show. We never got to see Rita without it off, so it's really cool to see that here. But Rita's about to get executed by Dark Spectre, and who shows up to save her? Well, none other than Lord Zed. And Lord Zed just blasts everyone with lightning. He grabs Rita and says, "Nah, this bitch mine," and he leaves. So again, you can see Lord Zed having some care for Rita in the end, which we'll go in a bit, that Lord Zed does care for Rita, and we'll be talking about that in a bit as we get closer and closer to the end of this issue. But that was a really cool moment when you had Lord Zed just striking everyone down with lightning, and he just grabs Rita and leaves. Like, he's like, "Nah, she mine," and he dips. So I really like that moment. And Dark Spectre isn't happy about this. He is pissed off and he tries to follow them through the barrier, and he just catches on fire because uncorrupted Morphin Grid energy is still poison to him. And this guy is burning up like the Human Torch. And the bad guys decide, well, we've got to leave. So enjoy this victory while you can, because next couple of issues, shit is probably going to hit the fan. I will just say that as we get closer and closer to the last couple of pages. But yeah, that was a really cool visual of just seeing Dark Spectre, just his whole body on fire as he tried walking through the barrier. So that's just a taste of what can happen to him if he touches Morphin Grid energy. So after that, we then come back to the command center and we have Tommy talking to Billy. And here you can see the events have taken a toll on Tommy physically and Billy mentally, as Tommy does apologize that he's missed so much while he was gone, because the comics did take their time reuniting Tommy with the team because he was captured back in issue 112 back in September. So roughly about 6 months it took him to reunite with his team again. Now, I want to talk about Billy here, because Billy here goes on this big speech about survivor's guilt and how people have died while they tried rescuing Tommy, and Tommy quickly goes to ask him, hey, is everything okay? And Billy doesn't really give a yes or no response, but he says that he's glad to have Tommy back. So Billy, of course, something's going on in his head right now. I guess like these events have sort of taken a toll on him mentally with everything going on. So I do wonder whether it's going to take Billy within... Well, we kind of have a tease of it because the solicitations for issue 121 dropped when this weekend. So we're definitely going to be seeing where this is going to be taking Billy later down the line. Because like I said, he doesn't give a yes or no response if he's okay or not. He just says, hey, Tommy, I'm glad you're back. So after that, the doors soon open up and Kimberly is standing there, teary-eyed, and she rushes over to Tommy. They embrace and they give each other a nice, heartwarming kiss. And this is a nice little moment between the two characters, because Tommy and Kimberly, before Darkest Hour and when Darkest Hour began, these two were fighting a lot with each other. And if things didn't go the way they did, this could have been the last time these two would have seen each other. So it's nice to have a nice happy reunion between these two lovers, because we kind of know what happens to Tommy and Kimberly in the future of Power Rangers, but this is still a nice little moment between the two, I will say that. So after that, we then cut to the Moon Palace, and you've got Rita groveling on the ground, and you can see that her staff has had the Zeo crystal removed from it, and Lord Zed is holding it, which is kind of a bad thing, because Lord Zed can do a lot of damage with that Zeo crystal. Now, the big question is, will Lord Zed use that Zeo crystal, or will he put it back to where it was before? So you've got Lord Zed talking down to Rita here, and you think that Lord Zed is going to open up a can of whoop-ass on Rita for what she did to him, but actually he's impressed because he says that it's in their nature as villains to betray each other, and because of her hatred for Lord Zed, she went and chose another master, which... This whole speech is just like another analogy of saying, like, when your partner cheats on you out of spite, and because Rita hated Lord Zed so much, she wanted to prove herself and went off and found another master that's doomed the entire universe. So Lord Zed does ask, saying, hey, because you hated me so much, you went and teamed up with the one guy that's going to doom this entire universe we set out to conquer. So what is going to happen to us next? And looking at this speech and looking how this page is drawn with how Lord Zed is holding Rita, sort of like it's a warm embrace in a weird way. Not a warm embrace like we had with Tommy earlier. It looks like he's holding her like they're about to dance across like the palace. In a way, I could be wrong. I could be looking into it wrong with how he's holding her. But this is probably how the relationship between Lord Zed and Rita begins in the comics, because if you remember in the TV show, Rita roofied Zed with a love potion, then they got married, then they fucked, then they had frax. Here, this is kind of more of a human progression of their love, and what swayed Lord Zed here is Rita's love and hatred of him, or her love-hate relationship between the two, you could say. And I wonder, if we don't see them soon, is the next thing we're going to hear of them if the comics continue is them getting married. So I do wonder if this is what Melissa is implying, like this is the start of the Lord Zed and Rita relationship that we're getting in the comics. So we'll have to wait and find out. So hopefully Melissa can confirm or deny or tease is this the start of the Lord Zed and Rita relationship that we all know about from the TV show? And if this is how their relationship starts, but I'm all for it because I feel like this is a better way of telling it, a more of a human emotional story, how they get together, than whatever the TV show did where they had to kiddify Lord Zed and Rita toned him down with the love potion and blah, 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 stuff like that. Like, if this is how Melissa is going to do it, I'm all for it. I can't wait to see where this is going to go with these two characters. So in the next 2 pages is a happy ending for the Omega Rangers, as you've got Jason and Zach sparring in the juice bar, and Zach is giving Jason shit on how Matt kicked his ass. While Trini is watching, the boys ask if she wants to join in, and she responds with, how about a cuddle? And you have the original trio of the Omega Rangers just hugging each other, which is a really nice moment because this is the first time in a while since issue 100 when we've had all these characters together in the same room at the same time. So it's a nice little moment, I will say that. But on the second last page, you've got Zach asking Trini if everything's all right, and Trini says she'll talk about it another time because you need to enjoy these moments like these because you never know what is going to happen next. So this leads into the final page where you have Kia teleporting into one of the Promethea bases on the Bermuda Triangle, and it's where the power eggs are being kept. And on the final panel, you have Kia grabbing one of the eggs and saying, hello friend, you're coming with me. And that's where 118 ends. Now, I don't remember what video it was. I think it was my preview pages for 118. Or maybe a couple of other videos before that. But I kept asking, what happened to Kia? Where's Kia? We haven't seen her since she blew up the Master Arch all those issues ago. And now she's back, and she's stolen one of the power eggs. And I honestly don't know who she's aligned herself with. Is she on Dark Spectre's team, or is she sort of just following the beat of her own drum? But what she's done has caused absolute chaos for what's to come later down the line, and I can't wait to see where it's going to go next. But that was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 118. Like I said, this is the end of an act, but it's going to lead into the next act that's going to lead into the grand finale, and I can't wait to see where it's going to go, because once again, Melissa has been killing it with Darkest Hour, and I can't wait to see how these next couple of issues for the next couple of months are going to go down, because we've got roughly about 4-5 more issues to go after this, and I honestly can't wait to see where it's going to go next, because if you've read the solicitations, you've been following my comic solicitation and previews on the channel, things are going to get crazy, so stay tuned for that. So with that said, I think I'm going to bring this video to a close. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. If you're new, I'll see you guys later. Peace out, take care, and bye. So, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 119 is finally out, and this issue was bonkers because we're getting closer and closer to the finale of Darkest Hour, but not only that, with recent news, we're getting closer and closer to the series finale of this comic. And once again, Melissa is out here killing it and blowing my mind with this story arc, because what this issue does, it's setting up a lot of things that we'll see as we get closer and closer to the finale, and things are gonna get crazy. So this issue opens up with Lord Zed locking Rita in the dumpster, which is not where I was expecting this to go, because with how last month's issue ended, with them I thought they were gonna get together. I honestly thought they were going to fuck or something. But nope, Lord Zed just locks her up in the dumpster. And maybe they did fuck. Maybe they did get together and have a one-night stand, and after Lord Zed was done with her, he tossed her in the dumpster. I honestly don't know. But after that, we have Billy wandering the halls of Promethea, and here is where he bumps into Kia right after what happened with last month's issue where she was stealing the power eggs. Now, we do get an explanation why she was trying to steal the power eggs later on in the issue, and we'll get to that when we get to that. But I'll talk about what we get here, because we have Kendall and Billy squaring off with Kia as she's trying to steal the power egg, and she is like quickly dealt with. Like, Kendall knocks Kia the fuck out with a single punch, which was really cool to see because Billy could have been the one who done it. Billy could have been the one that delivered that knockout blow, but it was Kendall, which is really great to see because that character I felt like was done dirty in later seasons of Dino Charge and Dino Supercharge. So it's cool to see this character have a cool spotlight moment in the comics because, like I said, that character was done dirty in the show, mostly due to the Sentai footage because they couldn't do a lot with that character. But here we get to have Kendall having a really cool badass moment. Now after that we do have a couple of pages where the other Rangers are recovering from recent events, and it's mostly the couples and the pairings we focus on as they confide in one another, because with how things are going in Darkest Hour, this is the closest thing they're probably going to get to a breather, because they're not going to have fun to hang out in the juice bar because things are going to get kicked into high gear very, very quickly. So the next couple of pages we have Squat and Babu trying to break Rita out of the dumpster, which again is really nice to see because we see the loyalty that these two have for Rita Repulsa. Babu's been kind of fickle, he jumps between whatever side suits him, but he's always had that loyalty to Rita as we saw in Go-Go. And Squat, well, he was adopted by Rita ever since he was a baby, so he's sort of got that child and mother bond between the two where it's sort of like a son's undying love towards its mother, which is a really nice thing as well, because even when before Darkest Hour began in Recharge, Squat was the one who took Rita's side at the very beginning. So he has been very loyal to Rita. But as we see Rita in the dumpster, this is her at her lowest point because we've always seen her plotting, we've always seen her scheming, trying to kill the Rangers, and Darkest Hour was where we had seen Rita at her most sadistic, at her most evilest, and here you can see that she's just given up because she believes that Dark Spectre has won, and the Rangers have already lost, so she believes that this is the end. And it's kind of a sad thing to see Rita here, but I gotta say, I really do love the artwork. We have Rita in the dumpster here because you sort of see these bright colors, this sort of like space-like galaxy background, and the poses and the artwork here that the artist has done here was giving me some major Sailor Moon vibes, especially near the end of Sailor Stars and stuff like that, with Galaxia, and even like earlier on with like Neo Queen Serenity, like those panels I was getting vibes with how they were drawn and how they were lit in the background and stuff like that. They were the vibes I was getting. Alright, so after that nice little moment between the villains, we then cut to the main big bad, Dark Spectre, who is kind of set back because with Rita turning on him, he's lost access to her magic, and he's lost access to her staff, which had the Zeo Crystal on it, so he's kind of weakened right now, as a lot of people are saying. So Dark Spectre, he's set back with the recent events, but Chloe's dad soon steps forward with this big reveal and what's going to be a game changer for Dark Spectre that's going to give him the winning advantage once again. So Dark Spectre has Tanya as Zeo Ranger Yellow step forward, and he says, "Tanya, please tell Dark Spectre about the Void." And this was the big oh shit moment I had with this issue. One of the big oh shit moments that I had with this issue, because if you know about the Void, and you know about what's going to be happening next month with which characters we're going to be focusing on, that being the Solar Rangers, you kind of know where Dark Spectre's going. And if you forgot about Beyond the Grid, well, in the Void, there was a whole planet that was covered in Zeo crystals. And if Dark Spectre gets a hold of this planet, well, that's not going to be good for our heroes moving forward, and not only that, it's not going to be good for the Solar Rangers as well. So I'm really excited for next month's issue with the Solar Rangers in 120, because we have not seen the Solar Rangers since like the finale of the finale of Necessary Evil. And one of the things that they teased way back then was that there was going to be more Solar Rangers showing up possibly. So that's cool to see. But it's also interesting to see that this is this Tanya still has her memories of the void that happened in Beyond the Grid all those years ago. So I thought they'd get erased, but apparently they didn't have their memory wiped when they jumped back to their main timeline. So that's another interesting note as well. But Dark Spectre going to the void and finding the planet of Zeo crystals, no doubt about it. That's going to be a big oh shit moment when we get there. So we then cut to Promethea, where Kia is confronted by Trini, and Kia is still pissed off about the whole Morpher being given to a cat thing. And I freaking love it. I love how petty, I love how pissed off, I love how upset Kia is that her Morpher was handed over to Yale. And she's like pissed off that her Morpher was given to a cat. But Trini says, hey, Yale proved that they were worthy, unlike you. Now, these next few pages are interesting because we get an answer to what Kia was doing the whole time when she ditched everyone. And I was not expecting this when we were getting an explanation. So we soon find out that Kia tried finding other rangers like her, rangers that will fight the good fight. She went to Edenoi, which was kind of disappointing because we had no cameos from Mars Rider. She went to Python 12 and we see the Cosmic Fury Rangers on one panel. We see Amelia and Ion, which was really cool to see. The Cosmic Fury Rangers finally make their cameo in the comics, which is great to see. Although it's one panel and they're sort of off in the distance and they're being corrupted, we are finally getting some main love to the last seasons of Power Rangers that aired. So that was really cool to see. But she soon found out that no matter where she went, Dark Spectre's influence was spreading. So she knew that what she had to do was use one of the power eggs, and what she plans on using one of the power eggs for is as a bomb that will destroy the Morphin Grid, because she says that is the best option right now, because as things are going right now, it seems like that Dark Spectre has already won. Now, while this is going on, we've got a conversation with everyone else with what they should do with the power coins, because they need both of them to stabilize the barrier. And I really like one of the lines that Ranger Slayer says here, where she says that if Draken has taught them anything, it's that one Ranger is never enough, and they need to rely on being a team. So it's up to Tommy if he wants to give up his powers or not. And in this moment, Tommy has this really good quote where he says, being a ranger means a lot to him, but what's more important to him right now is protecting his team. And I really like that line that Melissa wrote there. That shows that Tommy, he loves being a ranger, it means the world to him, but his friends and his team, that's just as important to him as well. So after that, Chloe's dad soon comes crashing down into the base, and we get this really cool civilian fight because the Rangers can't morph right now. So we get these really cool fight choreographies with the Rangers in their civilian forms. And seeing how the odds aren't in their favor right now, they decide to morph and risk it. And the reveal we get here is really, really freaking cool. And I don't know what the main thought of these suits are online. I don't know if people love them. I don't know if they're mixed, but I guess I'll find out when this review goes live. But what we get is these White Ranger hybrid forms. Now, this reminded me on the early Kyle run where they had to share their Green Ranger powers, but here they're sharing the white light with everyone. But what it also reminded me of was I remember having these bootleg Power Ranger toys back in the day, and everyone had the White Ranger shield for some reason. They're the vibes I was getting here. But I really do dig these new designs, this brand new power-up we're getting for the Rangers, because it's everyone inheriting the white light in their own unique way. So the bad guys dip because the Rangers have this brand new form, but Aisha, she ain't gonna have any of that. She grabs Ranger Slayer's bow and fires it at Rocky and Adam, purifying them. So in the final few pages, our heroes go back to the command center and they're trying to figure out what they need to do next. And Ranger Slayer explains that they need to go into the Solar Rangers dimension where they can hopefully find a way to purify the entire Morphin Grid from the void with the white light. And that's something I'm definitely really looking forward to seeing, because not only are we going to see Ranger Slayer reuniting with the Solar Rangers, we're going to have all these different characters traveling to this different dimension within the void, and they're going to see the splintered off dimension along with whatever else is out there in this universe. So I'm really excited to see what we might see in the Solar Rangers universe, because I get the feeling we're going to be in for a couple of surprises in 120. So the final page of 119 ends on a sad note. We don't get a crazy cliffhanger, we don't get a crazy action piece. What we get is a really sad moment, because like I mentioned earlier, this is Rita at her lowest point, and it ends with her saying, "Let the Rangers have their defeat or their victory if they can manage it," telling Squat to run away and find a safe place because he's free. As for her, she's done with it all and she's given up. And that's where the issue ends. Like I said, no crazy cliffhanger, no crazy action piece. We get Rita just given up and sad. Now I gotta talk about that final page, Mystic Mother. Now Mystic Mother has been brought up a lot in my comment section, and people have made a lot of predictions of people predicting that Mystic Mother will show up in the comics. Now I've never been against Mystic Mother showing up in the comics, but I feel like it's always a timing thing with how she can appear, because Rita has been in her villain phase in the comics for the longest time, and we're a few years off from the Z-Wave actually happening. But reading this month's issue and seeing how it played out, I feel like we're in the right step of Rita having this redemption and sowing the seeds of Mystic Mother, because her mother mentioned all the way back in Go-Go, knowing that there's still good in her. And although that line was sort of predicting Mystic Mother in 2019 and we had no idea where the comics would be between then and now, we all thought it as a nice little reference to Mystic Force. So what if Rita's turning early? She's becoming a good guy early with everything going on. But I am curious to see what Melissa has planned for Rita in the future of this comic, because we're getting closer and closer to Darkest Hour ending, but not only that, we're getting closer and closer to the comics in general ending. We've got roughly about 4 to 5 months left, and those 4 to 5 months will fly by before you know it. So I do wonder where all these characters are going to be at the end of this series once we reach the end game. But overall, 119 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was another great issue, really fantastic, setting up a lot of things for the big finale we'll be getting in the nearby future, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. But not only that, I did like the setup we got for 120 that we'll be getting next month as we visit the Solar Rangers universe and catch up with those characters. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. So anyway, guys, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day or night, and I'll see you guys in the next video, whenever that will be. Peace out. Take care. Bye. So Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 120 is finally out, and we're getting closer and closer to the finale of this comic book series. Now, issue 120, we get to revisit the Solar Rangers. For those who don't know, the Solar Rangers, they debuted in Beyond the Grid, the story arc that happened right after Shattered Grid. Now, Beyond the Grid is kind of a mixed bag within the fandom. Some people love it, some people hate it, some people just simply don't care for it. I have mixed feelings about this story arc, but that's a story for another day. But the Solar Rangers, they debuted at the end of Beyond the Grid, and the whole premise of Beyond the Grid is during the final battle against Draken in the last couple of issues of Shattered Grid, you had the big battle on the moon that they had with Draken, but also you had this rescue ops mission going on that comprised of several different Rangers who were saving the Rangers that were captured from Draken. Now, this rescue ops team was led by Grace Sterling, with Terraventure being the transportation they would use to rescue all these different Rangers, but the rescue team comprised of Ranger Slayer, Tanya from Zeo, Andros from Power Rangers in Space, you had Mike from Lost Galaxy, you had Cameron from Ninja Storm, and you had Heckle from Dino Charge. So it was a different ragtag team of Rangers that was leading this operation to save everyone. Now, of course, you did have other characters tagging along as well, like Corone as the pink Lost Galaxy Ranger, but she wasn't really part of that team, to be honest. So while the whole rescue ops mission was going on and they were saving all the different Rangers, Draken won the battle. And when Draken won the battle and hit the big reset switch on the universe where he created his own alternate reality where he was God and he watched over everyone, the rescue ops mission, they were flung into this unknown dimension simply known as the Void. And the Void is where we met Ari and Remy, Ari being the purple Solar Ranger. Now, the whole reason why the Void is in this unknown dimension out in the middle of nowhere is because there was this part of the galaxy that had this planet known as the Splintered Star, and the Splintered Star was a planet that contained nothing but Zeo crystals. So to make sure this planet didn't fall into the wrong hands, the Morphin Masters cut off that side of the galaxy from the rest of the Morphin Grid, putting it into the place known as the Void. Now, that is just the cliff notes of Beyond the Grid. There's a bunch of other stuff I have to sort of try and recap, but I don't want to, like Praetor being this Morphin Master that went evil and insane. But in the big climax of the battle against Praetor, you had Ranger Slayer and the other Rangers getting the ability to turn into the Solar Rangers. But after that story arc, our heroes went into their own timelines, and for the longest time, we haven't really revisited that part of the Boom Studios universe until now. I mean, we were even teased at the end of Necessary Evil that we would see this brand new team of Solar Rangers back in that finale, but after 6 years almost, or 5 years almost, we finally get to see this brand new team of Solar Rangers. And I think that's really nice because this is the final arc of the MMPR story arc. Everything's coming to a close very, very soon. And ever since Melissa's run began, it feels like she's been trying to wrap up whatever loose ends this comic might have going on. And this adds to the question, and this isn't my theory or my speculation. This was something that was discussed on Roll of the Queen's stream that I did a couple of months ago. But one of the speculations that someone brought up on the panel, and I do apologize if I can't remember who brought this up on the panel, but what if at the end of this comic book series, the comic verse either gets erased or reset or becomes its own separate thing, which I really hope that it doesn't get reset or erased with what happens at the end of this series, because that would take away the impact of these characters, the story arc, and the growth and the adventures we've had with them for the past 8 years. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But like I said, I think it's really nice that this is the final arc of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers comic books for the series, and Melissa is just trying to wrap up everything that she can and sort of revisit all these old places and old characters that we've met throughout the 8 years of the comic book run. Now, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers 120, the big Solar Rangers focused episode as we visit the Void once again. Now, this issue didn't go in the direction I was expecting to go, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, I'm saying it in a good way, because usually with my comic predictions and my theories when it comes to solicitations and preview pages, if you're familiar with this channel, I have all these crazy predictions and theories, and usually they go right out the window and into the void. Sometimes I get a 10 out of 10 or a slam dunk, but usually and more recently, they just go in different directions that I totally wasn't expecting. So this issue focuses on Ari and Remy, the purple and orange Solar Rangers, and we can see that they've already been dealing with the Thrall. So this issue looks like it opens up with a battle they've been fighting for the longest time. And they've already lost some of their team members to Dark Spectre. As we see, they've already become corrupted. And not only that, the character Ari has lost almost everything important to her, from her lover to her teammates and even the safety of the people she's trying to protect. And you can see that she's started a family and she's adopted the space orphan cat thingy-majiggy, and you can see that she's slowly having everything ripped from her as she's been fighting the battle against Dark Spectre on her own. Now, in this issue, we're introduced to the new Solar Rangers. we heard about, but we don't meet all of them. 3 of them we meet unmorphed, and the others are already corrupted. So we don't get to see all of them, unfortunately. Now, the ones we do meet are the ones I kind of wish we get to spend more time with, or at least there was an unlimited one-shot that tied into this issue, so we can actually meet the other Rangers, get attached to them, and understand what they were like before they were corrupted. Now, going back to the Solar Rangers, we do meet Tegan, who is the navy blue one, and more of a heavy-set character, which is cool to see, because in Power Rangers, we don't really see that these days, or we don't see those body type builds becoming Rangers. Sentai, we saw it a fair few, especially during the early days, but here, we see Power Rangers dig into that design. Now, the red and yellow Rangers are called Maxi and Salem, and these two characters are lovers, they're boyfriends. That doesn't bother me. I saw a few people on Facebook ranting and raving about it, having a cry about it, but I feel like those people who complain are the ones who don't read the comics or only read MMPR, so they're very out of the loop with what the comics have been doing for the past couple of years. And Maxi and Salem, I feel sorry for the most in this situation, because at the start of the issue, Maxi is unsure how to confess his feelings to Salem, and then during the battle against Dane and the corrupted Solar Rangers, you can see that they almost died in that battle, and Salem had his hand removed. So in this heated moment, in this sort of break between the war that they're fighting, they confess their love and their feelings towards one another, and it's because they don't know if this is going to be their final moment, which is a really nice moment within itself. So one thing that confuses me a lot about this issue is the ending. So the ending ends on this note where during the battle against Dane, Ari is narrating against how she kind of feels about this whole situation. She gets this inner monologue situation where she talks about how the void is a dark place and the only thing that kept her going was her love for Remy. And as she talks about that, Remy is corrupted by Dark Spectre, and she feels like that without Remy, that her heart is empty as the void, which is some really nice writing by Melissa here. So Melissa did some really good writing for the characters in this situation, and it made me like the Solar Rangers even more, because I feel like that Remy and Ari, they had some development in Beyond the Grid, but I feel like this expands on them a little bit more here, and I feel like Melissa did a really good job with that. So the issue ends with Ari making the choice to do what Praetor did, sever the grid between the Morphin Grid and the Void, and on the final page you have her standing over Ranger Slayer, who is now in handcuffs, and Ranger Slayer Kim looks distraught. And the ending is what confused me, because we suddenly see Ranger Slayer captured, she's looking at Kim with this crazy look on her face, like Ari's got this like crazy stare on her eyes, and that's what confused me about this month's ending, because I feel like we were missing something important here with why Ranger Slayer was captured. And I'm sure we'll get an answer in next month's issue, but it felt kind of weird, like you turn the page, you look down, and you see Ranger Slayer handcuffed, and you see Ari looking at her. So that ending kind of confused me, but it looks like that Ari is going to sever the link between the Void and the Morphin Grid to make sure that Dark Spectre doesn't get their hands on all of these Zeo crystals. So it looks like that possibly they're going to split the splintered star off into like another part of the galaxy. I'm not entirely sure, but like I said earlier, it seems like that Melissa is trying to wrap up whatever loose ends this comic series had, and I feel like maybe what she's going to do is that the Void universe is probably going to collapse within itself, or we're no longer going to see that part of the world anymore. It's hard to say at this point, because we've only got a couple more issues to go, and I feel like we'll get more context to what Ari plans on doing in next month's issue. But like I said earlier on in the review, I kind of wish we got a Solar Rangers, Power Rangers Unlimited book, but unfortunately we didn't. I feel like that would have been nice to sort of catch us up on these characters once again, because I feel like catching up on the Solar Rangers within 20 pages felt like a big task, and Melissa did it really well, but I kind of wish we got something extra, like some bonus content to see the Solar Rangers with how that led them into Darkest Hour. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Overall, I thought this was a really solid issue, some really great storytelling by Melissa, and I can't wait to see where it's going to go next because, like I said, this issue didn't go in the direction I was expecting to go in, and I'm curious to see how this is going to wrap up and sort of tie into the big finale of Darkest Hour, but not only that, the comic series within itself. So what did you guys think of this issue? Love it, hate it? Tell me in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. But with that said, I'm out of here. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out, take care, and bye. Billy Cranston has turned heel. Good boy Billy has gone rogue in order to protect the universe. So, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 121 is finally out. We've only got a couple more issues left until the big finale of this comic book series. We've got 121 this month, and then next month we've got 122, and then we've got the Darkest Hour finale. And I'm very curious to see how Melissa is going to tie it all together and wrap up this comic book series, because this issue had a twist I did not see coming with what Billy's actions would do, because this is a Billy-focused issue featuring a couple other characters, but this issue is Billy's breaking point by pulling a move I did not expect him to do. But if you read the issue, you can understand how we get there and how it leads up to these events throughout the comic. So let's go ahead and dive into Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 121, because there's a lot to go over with this issue. So issue 121 is a Billy-focused issue, which is really great because it's been a while since we've had a full-focused Billy issue, and although other characters do appear, you do get to see the psyche of Billy's mindset of what he's going through in this issue and what leads to the events where we get to right now. So the issue opens up with Billy getting out of bed, and you find out that he's been running on very little sleep, and he's having conversations with what seems to be the ghost or the spirit of Grace Sterling, but it's not the ghost of Grace Sterling. It's not a spirit talking to him with what we saw a couple of issues ago. This is actually Billy's subconscious trying to deal with his guilt, paranoia, and exhaustion, something we find out near the end of the issue. And although Billy's talking to what isn't the ghost of Grace, is his subconscious sort of conjuring this up, how he deals with his emotional trauma going on with everything happening, I'm sure that this is probably something that many people have done before in the past, where they sort of think they're talking to the ghost of their loved one, a friend, and that's sort of how they deal with everything going on around them. And that's something that Billy's done here in this issue. He's having conversations with himself, thinking it's Grace Sterling, but actually it's not. So then you have Billy talking to Kendall and the Phantom Ranger, and they're trying to discuss what their next plan of attack is, because the barrier is damaged and they don't have a lot of time, because Dark Spectre's infection, of course, is growing. And if it keeps growing, then of course the Earth is in danger, and that will leave our heroes open from a full-on assault from Dark Spectre, because the Morphin Grid energy is protecting them from Dark Spectre's influence, but not only that, Dark Spectre is still poisoned by Morphin Grid energy, so they can only have this barrier up for a certain amount of time for much longer. So Billy decides to go for a walk, and you have this scene where Billy visits Tommy, plus you've got Rocky and Adam there too, who are recovering from recently being freed from Dark Spectre's corruption. Billy soon has a small chat with Tommy, where he asks if there's anything he can do to help with Rocky and Adam, but Tommy tells Billy to wait because their recovery will take time. This then leads to Billy confronting Kia, and the next few pages is the catalyst for Billy's actions moving forward we see throughout the rest of this issue. So Billy asks Kia why she tried destroying the power eggs, and Kia responds by saying, "Hey, I was hoping that it would give off a reaction that would break the grid." Billy thinking she was trying to blow up the universe in a way. But that wasn't her plan, because once again we have a villain saying that Dark Spectre had already won, saying that the writing was on the wall when Mistress Vile infected the grid with her dark magic, and it would be only a matter of time before everything in the grid would get consumed unless they made a move to protect the grid like it once did before. So what Key is referring to is Shattered Grid, and Billy gets this entire recap with the events of what happened in Shattered Grid, because he's the only one of the original 6 that hadn't had their memories restored about the events of Shattered Grid. Everyone else had. Billy Billy hasn't yet, which I kind of forgot about because Tommy knew, Jason, Trini, and Zach knew when they became the Omega Rangers, and more recently, Kimberly had her memories restored at the end of the Forever Pink issue that Matt Groom did. So Billy was the only one who didn't know, and that kind of slipped my mind. But after learning about this revelation, Billy soon confronts Jason about it, upset that he was the only one who didn't know, and his friends were keeping this a secret from him. But not only that, the Blue Emissary kept it a secret from him, and Billy feels like he should have known about this from the Blue Emissary because, blue's his color. And I really like this panel you've got here because Jason is teaching karate to Bog Skull and even Ernie here, but Jason soon apologizes to Billy for not telling him because the Blue Emissary told him to keep it a secret, and then after that everything just kind of happened, which makes sense. I mean, Jason, Zach, and Trini became Omega Rangers, then you had Necessary Evil, then they went into space with Draken to sort of stop the Imperials, then they had more space adventures, the Altarian War, and now Jason's finally back on Earth. So a lot has happened, so I can understand if it might have slipped his mind. But learning that the grid shattered itself during Draken's attack to protect itself, Billy is thinking about doing the same thing because things right now, they're not looking so good. Now, Jason tries to talk him out of it, but Billy doesn't seem like he wants to listen, and I can understand where Billy's kind of coming from in this moment because things aren't looking good for the Earth. They're almost out of their defenses, they're almost out of options, and learning that the grid shattered itself to protect itself from this universal threat, or multiversal threat, then Billy feels like this is probably like the best and last option they can do right now. Although everyone's trying to talk him out of it, he's willing to go through with it. So Jason and Billy, their conversation kind of ends there, and then we have this scene where Billy is sitting on a bench, he's watching the sunset, you see this rainbow barrier over the lake, and it's a really, really nice, well-drawn scene here. Really love the artwork in this issue because they brought back Kendry Prestelia for this issue, so the artwork here, really freaking great. But Billy's having this conversation with himself because, like I said, he thinks that he's talking to Grace Sterling, but it's all in his head. So he's having this conversation with himself, and eventually he comes to the conclusion with what he must do. And then that leads into the final stretch of this issue because next few pages, we're in for a wild ride. So it starts with Coinless Trini walking to the Promethea base where the guards call her Old World Trini and ask if she's here to see Bluey. Coinless Trini quickly makes work of these guards, and looking at them, I swear their armor is a mix between Doom and Halo. But Billy soon arrives and they prepare to free Kia from her prison. And like I said, this is where shit hits the fan, and my jaw was dropping upon my first read through of this because I was not expecting Melissa to go this route. So we have these two scenes that play out. Billy confronting Kendall and the Phantom Ranger, making it seem like there's going to be another day at the office trying to fix the barrier. And then you've got Trini and Kia now donning the white light outfit with her armor on there, and Coinless Trini and Kia confronting Matt and Aisha, where you see them training, and we get a small scuffle between Kia and Coinless Trini, which, of course, Kia and Coinless Trini win because, they're outmatched. So you see Coinless Trini going upon this villain route, or I don't want to say villain, this like heel or rogue route with Billy going along with his plan, which I can understand where she's coming from as well in this issue because, she loved Billy so much in the other universe that she's willing to follow through with him if he's got a plan. So Billy's heel turn is so freaking amazing here. He has this scene where he asks if he can look at Kendall's energem because he says he might be able to find a way to fix the barrier by looking at it. He then whips out his blade blaster, shoots the Phantom Ranger, doesn't kill him, but he basically paralyzes him. And then after that, I think he probably knocks out Kendall Morgan. But the artwork here is so amazing, and Billy is one of those characters you would never think would go down this route. You never think he'd go rogue, you never think he'd go heel, but he's doing this to protect his universe. As he says, he has this line where he says, the universe is his family, or this universe is his family, and he'll do anything to preserve it. And I can understand where Billy's coming from. I mentioned this earlier, but just think about it. Everything that's happened in Darkest Hour, every plan they've gone through with has had setback after setback. Plans don't go according to plan. And Billy must feel like he's at his wit's end here because he's known as this really smart guy, and everything he's been trying to do has not been working. So his last resort is to cause another shattering within the Morphin Grid, as he believes it's the only way to fix everything. Like I said, he wants to protect his friends and his family and this universe, so he's doing the last resort needed, necessary here. But I also do like that line where after Billy takes out Kendall and the Phantom Ranger, you have this line where Kia says, yeah, remind me not to piss off Billy in the nearby future. Dude's kind of scary when he's like this. So the issue ends with Billy grabbing his power lance, slamming it down on the barrier doohickey, causing a massive explosion. And that's where the issue ends. So yeah, this issue was fan-freaking-tastic. Again, Melissa is killing it with Darkest Hour, and I'm so curious to see how she's going to end all of this, because we had Billy, a character go rogue, a character I did not expect to go rogue, and it was written so well. Some people might think it's a left turn, some people might think it came out of nowhere, but if you understand where the character's been in the comics since the very beginning, this makes sense for him to sort of make this drastic move. But again, this was like another fantastic issue. The art was really great, the writing was really great, and I do wonder what's going to happen, because it looks like on that final page you have Kia getting sucked in, like she looks a little bit warped there, so no idea what's going on there. But Billy looks like he's going to cause another shattering within the grid, and it's going to have repercussions that's going to lead into the next issue and then lead into the big finale at the end of July, because like I said, we've only got 2 more issues after this and then the mainline comic is done. So how is Melissa going to end all of this? Because like I said, 1 more issue next month and then the big one-shot finale at the end of July, and I'm so curious to see how it's all going to end and what could possibly come after this with the comics. But again, I freaking love this issue, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen next. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out, take care, and bye. So it's finally here, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 122, the penultimate issue, the finale before the big grand finale. And once again, this was another fantastic issue. Melissa is killing it like always. And next week is the big grand finale of the Mighty Morphin Power Ranger comic books, the end of the Boom Studios universe as they've been calling it. But I am curious to see how things are going to end after this week's issue, because we've got this issue, 122, and then next week we've got the Darkest Hour finale. And I am getting curiouser and curiouser to see how Melissa is going to end this series, because, like I said, this was a wild issue, and I freaking loved it, and I can't wait to see where it's going to go next moving forward. And with that said, let's talk about Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 122. So last month's issue, you had Billy destroying one of the power eggs because he viewed this as the best option with everything going on right now, and he thought that there was no beating Dark Spectre. Dark Spectre had already won, so Billy's goal, or Billy's resolve, was to destroy one of the power eggs, and that would cause another splinter within the Morphin Grid, much like what Draken did all those years ago in Shattered Grid. So Billy's plan doesn't go exactly well as planned once again, and he's pulled into a pocket dimension by Zordon, and the two have a little bit of a one-on-one talk. And Zordon has questions. It's like, you betrayed us, and Billy's like, no, I didn't. I thought this would be for the best for everyone. Dark Spectre's winning. I viewed this as the best choice done. And Zordon goes for an array of different emotions, because what Zordon tells Billy by saying, hey, you probably messed up our chances of winning and we might be more fucked than usual. And we get this page where we have this montage of panels of what's going on outside of the pocket dimension. You've got Ranger Slayer and the Solar Ranger fighting. I'll touch on that in a bit. You've got Tommy meditating with Adam, Rocky, and Matt. Kendall and the Phantom Ranger are trying to fix the situation, and Lord Zed is staring at the Zeo Crystal. I don't think he's going to grab it. I mean, he tried that all those years ago and it didn't work out well to him, so I'm guessing he's staring at it as his last resolve trying to defeat Dark Spectre, maybe, possibly. I think if Lord Zed grabs that, he's just going to get burnt to a crisp even more. So, you know when your parents say, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed in you? That's what we've got here with Zordon and Billy, because Zordon is disappointed in Billy's actions here, because Zordon says, hey, why didn't you consult me on this idea? And Billy's like, well, I didn't, because you'd probably say no, so I went through it anyway. And Zordon apologizes to Billy, saying, I'm sorry I failed you because I treated you like a soldier when actually you're a teenager. And Billy thinks he can fix this because he's a ranger. He's like, I'm a Power Ranger, I can fix this. But Zordon tells Billy, saying, hey, I know you're smart, you're like good at a lot of things, but acts like these destroy the best of men, and I hope you can live with the actions or the choices you've made right now today, because with what you've done, you might have screwed us all, so hopefully you can live with that on your conscience. And again, some another fantastic writing from the comics with Zordon here, because the comics have expanded Zordon to be more than a floating head in the tube. We've got to learn about his past, his backstory within the comics' 8-year run, and we've sort of felt for him as he's sort of delivered these speeches. But Zordon delivering that whole line saying, I've treated you like soldiers and not teenagers, I get where they're coming at. I don't want to dive too deep into that whole like creepypasta theory where Power Rangers are being trained as soldiers to fight in war. You could say yes, there's sort of like a bit more leverage to that creepypasta theory, but Zordon did recruit a bunch of teenagers to help him sort of end this war against evil that he's been fighting for thousands of years. But I don't know, I'd have to probably go back and reread a couple of issues again for like the 20th, 50th time to see, is Zordon actually treating them like soldiers more than teenagers? It's a bit of a hard debate, you could say, but I do like that line that Zordon had in there. So you know how all the way back in issue 120 where you had the Solar Ranger looking down at Ranger Slayer Kim and we had no idea where that cliffhanger was going? Well, this issue we finally get an answer, and apparently Ranger Slayer was like locked in a holding cell because Ari didn't trust her with her just randomly showing up and thought that she might turn on him like all the other Rangers, so they got locked up in confinement just to be safe, which is kind of weird. I mean, she didn't show up corrupt or anything like that, she just kind of probably showed up out of the blue. Maybe there was some conversation being had where Ranger Slayer needed to go to the splintered star planet with the Zeo Crystal, with everything going on, but yeah, the two of them get into a bit of a fight, and it's a pretty cool fight, I will say that. But Ari is able to get the upper hand in the fight as she's able to knock Ranger Slayer Kim out of her morph state, and Ranger Slayer Kim, being the badass that she is, gets knocked down, gets back up again, because she didn't hear no bell. But the fight is soon brought to a stop as the small child called Sauda, that Ari and Remy adopted, runs onto the battlefield. I say battlefield, but they're like fighting on the base that they're at. But the kid's ball rolls by Kim's feet and she politely asks for it back. So that brings the fight to a close. So Kim and Ari have this chat to each other where Ari is upset that she's lost almost everything and everyone and is scared she's going to lose everything and everyone in the situation, because with this whole Dark Spectre thing going on, she's lost some of the closest people she's had. But Kim reassures her that she'll save everyone, and if she can be freed from the corruption, then it's a sign that Remy can be freed from the corruption as well. So Billy is brought back to the others, and Kendall lays the frickin' sass on him because Billy thinks what he did here was right and thinks that Kendall will eventually understand him. And I freaking love Kendall's response here by going, God, I forgot how young you are. And reading that line, I could hear that delivery in Kendall's actress's voice. But seeing how Billy was brought in to the others, like they detained him, they put some cuffs on him, what the heck happened to Coinless, Trini, and Kia? Were they arrested or detained as well, or did they escape and go somewhere? Because you saw them sort of being caught in that explosion earlier in the last issue, and they were sort of being pushed forward or blown away from it. But did they get captured as well, or did they make an escape for it? No idea at this point, but I do wonder where the heck they are right now. Maybe we'll find out next month in the big grand finale, but it makes me wonder what the heck happened to them. Like, they're probably off having their own little adventures somewhere. But Kendall explains to Billy by saying because they're using the remaining power egg and trying to fix the connection, when they go to reactivate the arch, the barrier will go down, meaning that Earth will be defenseless. So, like I said, Billy's kind of fucked the whole situation here when he destroyed one of the power egg. I mean, it was already unstable when Kia tried taking one of them, but now, because Billy destroyed one of them, it's sort of running on limited energy here, and when they have to sort of do a soft reset of the arch, well, it's not going to look good for our heroes because they won't be able to morph because of the infection that's growing. So after that, they then cut to the park where more training exercises are happening, and you have this one scene that I really freaking loved where Bulk thinks he has a chance with Taylor, and Skull is like really freaking sarcastic to him by saying, yeah, she's like an Air Force pilot, a Power Ranger, and you're some high school kid. You got this, fam. Which Bulk thinks that he's got a chance at like rizzing up Taylor and probably dating her, which is kind of funny. But I also do like Skull's response where he's like, yeah, I prefer them to be blue, like referring to Candace, where she was an alien from Eltar, which I freaking love this one panel. It was some really fun banter, some really fun character interactions, and a lot of fun. Like, I feel like the writing for that one scene was like a lot of fun. I really got a kick out of it. Now, this next page is freaking heartbreaking. So you've got Zach and Trini training there as well, and they're flirting with each other. It's really cute, really wholesome. I love how Melissa has handled this couple in the comics. But while they're training, you've got Jason watching. And while Jason's watching, he's zoning out, and Taylor's trying to talk to him, and you can see this look of sadness on his face. And it took me a couple of reads until it actually hit me. And when it did hit me, I was like, holy shit. He might actually still have feelings for Trini right now. And right now, he's watching his best friend hook up with her, which there's so many ways you can look at this, like, because Trini and Jason broke up in Go-Go Power Rangers because they were worried that it might be something that the enemy could use against him. But then it also makes you wonder, did Jason think that if he never lost his powers, stayed on the team, he might have had a second shot? But then again, I've got to bring it back to my first point. The dude is literally seeing his best friend hook up with his ex who was also his best friend. And 90% chance, I bet you they fucked. Now, speaking of getting fucked, the next few pages is where the action starts. You have Angel, Chloe's dad, invade Earth, and he's brought a couple of friends. Psycho Yellow, Psycho Blue, Shelby, Tyler, Alyssa, and Danny. Now, seeing how on the heroes' side they've got Kendall and Taylor, I can see these 4 Rangers getting purified and probably becoming Rangers once again and joining the side of good. But I'm also confused why the Psychos had to get corrupted. I know they can morph, we've seen that in the other comics, depending on where you stand, where the continuity is for the Psychopath. But I'm a little bit confused why they had to get brought under Dark Spectre's control. I know they can be wild cards, and I know they can be a little bit unpredictable sometimes, and seeing how they had the opportunity to kill Rangers, I'm sure they would have signed up for this without a second doubt. But like I said, they are very wild, they are very unpredictable, so Dark Spectre thought, better keep them in line somehow in case they mess up my plan, so that's probably why he's got them under the corruption. But things aren't looking good for our hero. They're outnumbered, there's more evil Rangers than good Rangers, but with perfect timing and with an amazing dramatic entrance on a 2-page spread, the Hyperforce Rangers show up, and it's good to see them again, because a lot of people were worried, including myself, where they were, because the last time we saw them, they were sort of traveling the multiverse to get more allies, and then after that we didn't see them for the longest time, so it worried me that maybe they were intercepted by Dark Spectre and his forces, but no, they are here and they have allies from across the multiverse because they brought along with them Dino Thunder White, Dino Thunder Black, Beast Morphers Gold, Beast Morphers Yellow, the Blue Centurion, Zeo Gold, Time Force Blue, Lost Galaxy Pink, the Magnet Offender, RPM Silver, and I think that's possibly RPM Gold in the back there. But this is like a fantastic lineup of allies that they brought with them. Again, I am crossing my fingers and crossing my toes we get like an old man Tommy interacting with like a young Tommy here. And we're also going to have Zeo Gold here, which is probably Trey. I don't think it's going to be Jason. No idea. I think people are hoping we see Jason Zeo Gold interact with his young self, but that might kind of spoil things to come later down the line with what Jason will see his fate being in the nearby future. But overall, this is like a solid lineup. The only one I question here is maybe Time Force Blue, because why did you grab Lucas out of all people? I mean, you couldn't grab Jen, your mentor, like the mentor for the Hyperforce Rangers, who sort of helped them become Rangers. They couldn't grab Jen for like 2 seconds in that universe. I don't know. I guess that's fine. But I would have picked Jen for sure, because, you know, Jen was such an iconic character in Shattered Grid. It'd be cool to see her jumping back into the action again. But like I said, this is a pretty solid lineup, and I'm hoping, I don't want to get my hopes up too much because we've only got one more issue left, but I'm hoping that we see like freaking Tommy, like White Ranger Tommy interact with like Dino Thunder Black Tommy. That'd be really great to see. Like, we'll see what happens. I don't know. I don't want to get my hopes up too much with having, like, character interactions like that, but it'd be cool to see. I hope we get it. And just when you think this fight couldn't get even more insane, Lord Zed shows up with his Megazord and starts battling it out with the Vile ship. And the whole reason why Zordon formed an alliance with him is because Serpentera is the only Zord that can chase away the Space Skull out of the sky. But Torona thinks that this is probably a bad idea, because once the battle's over, Lord Zed could probably turn that Zord on the Earth and blow it up. Like, Serpentera can destroy planets, so that's kind of got them fucked over if Lord Zed decides to switch his alliances really quickly once Dark Spectre is gone. But Billy has some knowledge that Grace modified Serpentera with some lockout codes, which surprises Torona. Now, the issue ends on a really interesting note. You have Ranger Slayer narrating how Rangers can't do this alone and they're stronger together, and how they'll never lose hope. And we get this montage of panels, and one of the ones we get is Billy looking at the memorial for Grace and the other Rangers from 1969. And as he's staring at the Grace panel, or the photo, he has this surprised look on his face, which, no idea what's going on there. I'm guessing he might have figured out something, or Grace might have left some kind of clue for him. Not entirely sure. But the issue ends with Ari floating in space and a light emits from her, ending Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 122, where the issue will conclude in the Darkest Hour finale. Alright, so that was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 122. Like I said at the start of the video, another fantastic issue done by Melissa and everyone else involved. What are your thoughts on this month's issue? Tell me in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions, your theories, your speculations with how the finale is going to turn out. But also don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and share this video around on social media. Helps me out a lot, helps out the channel, helps people discover this video and this kind of content more often. But with that said, I'm going to bring this video to a close, and I will see you guys next week on July 31st for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the Darkest Hour finale, which will be the end of the comic book series as it comes to a close. With that said, peace out, take care, and bye. So we're finally here, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Darkest Hour, the grand finale for the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers comic books. And before we get into the main review, before we get into the recap and the meat and potatoes, I just want to say thank you to everyone for all the support over the past couple of years. When I first started talking about Power Ranger comics on the channel, I was never expecting it to get this big. I was never expecting it to get this much support from everyone, from friends to family to content creators and people in the community I would meet online. Thank you everyone for the support over the past couple of years. It means a lot to me. And with the mainline comics coming to a close, it feels like a chapter in my life is coming to a close as well, because I've been covering these comics for what seems like forever, and for it to come to an end, well, it's kind of hard to swallow in a way. Okay, I think that's enough emotional speeches for now. We'll do more at the end of the video. But let's talk about Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Darkest Hour, the final issue, the grand finale in the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers comic book. Let's go. So the issue opens up with what I can believe is what happened when Darkest Hour began, when Zordon's original body, the vessel, is floating through space, and you see what happens moments before Dark Spectre took it over. And Zordon's body has this inner monologue how he's witnessed all this destruction and all he can do is watch it through his own eyes. We then cut to Earth where the battle is still raging on from last issue. Lord Zed is fighting the Vile ship, Chloe is fighting her dad, and the other Ranger teams are fighting Thrall's and Dark Spectre's forces. Now, Chloe's finally able to settle the score with her dad, which is satisfying to see, but there's one thing that doesn't really get resolved in this battle between Chloe and her dad, and that is the fate of her mother. Something we learnt about in the Hyperforce one-shot from last year, that she's actually alive, so I do wonder if we'll ever follow up on that story, or it's going to be one of those threads left dangling. But luckily, they're able to push back Angel and his forces for the time being. I mean, Lord Zed is able to knock the Vile ship out of the sky and it comes crashing down. Bulk is able to get a good punch on one of the Thralls, and even Trini is able to slice one open. So they're able to push back Angel and his forces for now, but this isn't the last they've seen of him, that is for sure. So on the next page, we have Tommy and Kimberly preparing their final goodbyes to each other because they don't know what's going to happen next. These are two soldiers saying goodbye to each other as they're shipped off to war. So the two of them have a tearful goodbye, and while this is going on, you've got Rocky and Adam inside, watching, holding hands. Now these guys are terrified about what they need to do next, and I can understand why. When Darkest Hour began, they were captured, tortured, and corrupted. And that's probably the most scariest thing they've been through within their time as a Ranger. And in issue 121, they were still going through the sort of the recovery and the therapy of what just happened. And now they're jumping right back into the action where it could happen to them again. So I can totally understand why these two bros are holding hands, because this might be their final moments together. Okay, so last week's issue, we had this one scene where Billy had noticed that Grace Sterling actually died in 1969 when he was looking at one of the memorials, and this was one of the effects of Billy splintering off the grid when he broke one of the power regs. Now, I did miss this originally. I missed it, my bad, I didn't catch on to it, but you guys were quick to correct me and tell me exactly what I missed. So props to you guys for helping me put that piece together that I wasn't quite seeing when I originally first read it. Now, because Billy splintered off the grid, it caused Grace to die in 1969, but also it erased the existence of Kia and Coinless Trini. So that explains that mystery. In my previous review, I thought maybe they got arrested, maybe they got put in a jail cell or something like that, because we didn't see any of them in last month's issue, but that wasn't the case. They got erased from existence when the grid splintered off. Maybe they got pushed into another timeline entirely, not sure, but Billy does say that it erased their existence in this timeline. Now, Billy plans on fixing his mistake, and we'll talk about that later, especially at the end of the video when this issue comes to a close, but Zordon tells Billy before they can fix the grid, they need to save it. After that, you then have Taylor and Jason discussing the plan, and you have this moment where Jason is admiring Taylor for being such a great captain and ranger. Taylor says that Jason is a great ranger as well, but Jason says he used to be a great ranger, but maybe someday he'll become a ranger again. But for now, he says that he's just a civilian, taking his last stand to defend the Earth so the Rangers can protect it. And Taylor's response here is really great. She smacks him upside the head and tells him not to treat it like a suicide mission and not to die out there. Now, Taylor and Jason's interactions throughout Darkest Hour have been really great to read. I feel like Melissa's writing for these two characters interacting have been really great. I kind of wish that Taylor got to do a little bit more in Darkest Hour, but with her military background and leading the civilian forces on Earth, it makes sense. But I kind of wish we got to see more of her and Jason interacting. But her giving that pep talk to Jason and smacking him upside the head, tell him to just don't say stupid shit like that, a lot of fun to see. Now, for all those Jason and Trini shippers, the next scene here is pretty freaking wholesome. So Jason confronts Trini on her relationship with Zach, and it's a mature talk they have. No angst, no drama, no yelling, no shouting. They just talk it out. And Trini just says it just suddenly happened and she didn't mean for it to hurt Jason. But they soon tell each other with how much they love each other and they hope they both survive. And so it seems like that the two of them still had feelings for each other the whole time. And that feelings, or those feelings they had for one another, they never went away. So what we get here is a nice little moment, and it's great to see that here again because this is the finale of the Power Ranger comics entirely. So for this plot thread to get wrapped up or resolved, I'm glad that Melissa did it. And thank you, Melissa, for giving me the moment I really, really wanted to see where Tommy met Tommy. So MMPR Tommy got to meet Dino Thunder Tommy. The interaction I really, really wanted to see if they would actually do it in the comics, and they actually did. And what we get is we have younger Tommy surprised that he becomes a doctor in the future, but older Tommy thought he'd question the haircut. So again, classic Tommy banter, you could say, but I'm really glad we got this moment. I was thinking we'd sort of get them fighting side by side, but because Tommy has kind of given up his powers to share out the white light, we don't really see Tommy morphing in this issue, but it was still cool to finally see them both interact together. That was great to see. I'm glad we got that moment in the finale of the Power Ranger comics. I mean, I would have cried in the corner if I didn't get it. So Ranger Slayer and Solar Ranger are able to get the Void reconnected and get the signal ready for the others to travel through. And I really do like Billy's comment about the Void opening up where he's like, oh, so that's Ranger Slayer's signal. I thought she'd send a text or something. And then after that, you have this moment between Kendall and the Phantom Ranger. And again, these are two characters that the comic is able to make interact with each other and they can work off each other. And I feel like, again, Melissa did a fantastic job writing these two characters together and how they played off with each other, with Kendall's smarts and the Phantom Ranger's wisdom that he's had over the past couple of thousand years. But Kendall doesn't want to leave Earth behind again, but the Phantom Ranger tells her that she needs to go. But Kendall wants the Phantom Ranger to come along because, it's the Phantom Ranger. They need him. They need all the help they can get. But the Phantom Ranger says, hey, I can't morph, so I'm not going to be much use for the plan. And the Phantom Ranger also doesn't want to abandon this arch again. So the two have a nice wholesome moment. But the Phantom Ranger tells Kendall by saying that the Earth has more champions than you realize, and we will keep it safe for your return. Kendall thanks the Phantom Ranger, but the Phantom Ranger says there is no need for thanks. In these moments, the only thing that matters is the choices we make. So, in last week's issue where Lord Zed was reaching out for the Zeo Crystal and I was questioning it going, why is he grabbing that? That isn't good. He's going to get burnt to a crisp again. Well, actually, it turns out that the Death Ranger was inside the Zeo Crystal the whole time. How? Why? Well, do you remember in issue 115 when Rita started attacking the Death Ranger for their failures a couple of issues ago? Well, apparently the Death Ranger didn't die. Rita just trapped them in the Zeo Crystal and they would be released when they needed to be useful. Well, in this situation, they need the Death Ranger to be useful, so the Death Ranger is joining the final battle. But the moment is arriving very soon. The battle is about to begin. Several Rangers run through the portal. Friends and lovers say goodbye to each other, and while this is going on, Billy is having this inner monologue, but it's like he's almost writing in a journal. Something we'll touch upon later on at the end as well. Don't worry, there's a lot of things we've got to talk about at the end of this issue. But it looks like he's writing a letter to Grace, saying that he understands why she started Promethea, as Grace thought that Rangers wouldn't be enough to save the Earth. Maybe humans would be. Billy understands that Grace wants him to follow in her footsteps, but he admits that he's messed up and promises that he won't let her down again. And it almost looks like that Billy's going to stay behind, but the Phantom Ranger soon hands Billy a new form of Morpher, saying that now is the time for him to prove himself. The battle in the void soon begins as Dark Spectre's forces soon invading, led by Remy and Dane. The Solar Rangers soon morph and summon their Zords, which leads to a big space battle between the different Zords. Now, it's been years since I probably talked about the Solar Ranger Zords, and they're alright. They're different spaceship designs, but they all do have a unique look to them that reflects their Rangers or the original Rangers that piloted them back in the day. And with this giant space battle going on, Ranger Slayer watches from below, but she's soon confronted by Dark Spectre and several other Rangers. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the heroes are still struggling to fight off Angel and his forces, and things aren't looking good for them. I mean, you have Ernie joining the battle as well, which is pretty cool. I will say that he just charges in there. But Skull is confronted by Danny, Wild Force Black, and you have this scene where it almost looks like he's going to bite the dust, but suddenly he's saved by Zalia, aka Candace, his alien girlfriend. The two reunite, which is a really nice moment, I will say that. Like I said earlier, Melissa is like tying everything together from the last 8 years to give it a pretty satisfying ending for these characters. Like, we get all these reunions and characters showing back up. It's pretty nice. But Zalia, or Candace, whatever you want to call her, she brings reinforcements from the planet Eltar as they join the battle as well. Back in the void, things aren't looking good either. The space battle is looking grim, and Ranger Slayer isn't able to hold off Dark Spectre. But help soon arrives, and this is where all-out war for the fate of the Morphin Grid begins. While Billy carries up Zordon to the top so he can set their plan into motion, he begins writing to Coinless Trini, saying that he'll find a way to bring her back. Meanwhile, the battle continues to rage on. You have Rangers fighting Rangers, Serpentera being controlled by Squat, Babu, and Goldar in their Dark Ranger forms, which again, like I've said 50 times in this video, Melissa is pulling out all the stops and all the references with the past 8 years of the comic books. Now, the Hyperforce Megazord is there too, and Lord Zed soon begins fighting Dark Spectre, and he's almost about to get killed, but the Death Ranger soon shows up and pulls a Shang Tsung on freaking Dark Spectre, trying to rip out their soul, but they're easily stopped. Now that he's dealt with everyone, Dark Spectre makes his way to the Rangers, and this is where the do-or-die plan comes into motion. Now, the best way to describe this plan is how they describe it in the comic, and the way Zordon and Kimberly and all that describe it is, it's like sunlight coming through a lens, causing a spark that will start a flame. Zordon is the lens, and the grid energy is the light. The remaining Rangers stand in front of Zordon's portable tube, and soon morph. A golden light of morphin energy emits out, and Dark Spectre soon catches on fire. He tries to get back up again, but Zordon's body soon intervenes as it takes control, deciding that the both of them will be purged. The Mighty Morphin Power Rangers do their last morph, and Dark Spectre is burnt to nothing, finally defeating him. Dark Spectre is now defeated. The corruption is gone, but the grid is still shattered, splintered off, but Billy says that he can heal it. It just takes time. And I really do like that moment where Kimberly says, "Are you sure that you can heal the cracks?" And Billy says, "Do you trust me?" And Kimberly gives him a kiss on the cheek and says, "I never stopped believing in you." And it's a really nice moment between the two of them. So Billy walks through the aftermath of the battle, and we have some reunions between everyone after this giant battle. Some tearful reunions, some sad reunions, some people having no reunions at all. But Billy watches everything and falls to his knees as he sees the aftermath. And he says this as he's writing a letter to Zordon by saying, "You once told me that there is a delicate balance between good and evil, and when that balance is unpended, there will always be consequences." Flash forward several years later, and we see a much older Billy. He's still in his ranger suit, but he's wearing normal clothes over it. He's wearing what seems to be like a biker getup almost. He's got the tall boots, the fingerless gloves, a jacket. He's grown a beard. His hair is a lot more messier now, and he has a scar across his face. Billy then starts writing this down in his journal. It may take my whole life, but I'll never stop working to repair the grid. I made mistakes, but you forgave me for them. But in the end, we saved the world, defeated Dark Spectre. I know you were proud. And although some things changed, others didn't. No matter how uncertain our future is, or what evil may be coming for us, there will always be Power Rangers, and they will never stop fighting. Billy places his journal down, and he looks at his hand. In it looks to be a brand new Morpher, the Triceratops coin in it. Billy clenches his fist tightly and says, "It's Morphin time." And after 8 long years, the Mighty Morphin Power Ranger comic books have come to a close. So yeah, that was the Darkest Hour finale. After 12 long months, this story arc has come to a close. One of the longest story arcs we've had within the Power Ranger comics. And with the Darkest Hour finale, I'm walking away with mixed feelings. I didn't downright hate it. I enjoyed it. You can probably tell that from the review. There's some parts that I did enjoy. There's some parts I have mixed feelings on. And I feel like the part that I have probably the mixed feelings on the most is the final battle. Although the final battle was drawn really well, some really great artwork, it kind of felt rushed. And I'm not hanging shit on Melissa. I think she's a very talented writer. She's good at what she does. But I feel like that maybe that the final battle was kind of anticlimactic with how they defeated Dark Spectre. Yeah, it was a giant Z-Wave and that scene was pretty cool, but the final battle felt a little bit rushed. And I am wondering, maybe Dark Spectre had gotten too powerful that maybe Melissa might have ridden herself into a corner with how they were going to deal with Dark Spectre. Maybe if she got given a couple more issues and maybe the finale would have played out a little bit differently. I'm not entirely sure. But the whole final battle felt very rushed, and maybe we could have gotten some more fight scenes between all the different Ranger teams with everything going on, sort of having that all is lost moment where it looks like the bad guys were going to win and the good guys were going to lose with everything going on. But characters like the Death Ranger showing up is kind of questionable within itself. I get that they were trapped within the Zeo Crystal. Rita did that to them. But the Death Ranger was brought back just to have a couple of scenes, and they got freaking laid out pretty quickly by Dark Spectre, and they were down within like 2 panels, and Dark Spectre wasn't even trying. I get having the scene there, trying to rip out the soul of Dark Spectre from the vessel, noticing that scene, but they got dealt with fairly quickly. And what was the point of the Death Ranger being there if they were just going to be fodder in the end? So it does make me wonder if there was more issues planned for this story arc, or was there some last minute changes that had to be done to make sure this wrapped up in 122 and the Darkest Hour one-shot finale. So I do wonder if there was an extended ending planned for this story arc, but things got shifted behind the scenes. But if there's a couple of changes I would have made with this story arc, it would have been 120, the Solar Ranger focused issue, be an unlimited book, so that way you'd get more pages focusing on the Solar Rangers, and we could expand on them a little bit more. But also, maybe that epilogue we get at the end could have been the actual finale. Like, there could have been something leading into this epilogue by showing, hey, this is not only what happened to Billy several years into the future, but this is what happened to everyone else several years into the future, and this is what the Boom timeline now looks like. I do understand leaving it ambiguous and up to your own imagination with what happened in the Boom timeline with how Billy's narrating everything, and I freaking love Billy's older design with the beard and the messy hair and the leather jacket, like the biker getup. I think that looks really cool. But I feel like that epilogue probably could have been its own issue within itself, and it's sort of like what happened to these characters after the battle against Dark Spectre, and where are they now? Like, what happened to a bunch of these characters after the battle? Like, what happened to Tommy? What happened to Jason? What happened to Matt? How are they rebuilding after this? How is the timeline slowly getting fixed with the grid slowly repairing itself? I'm not entirely sure. We do have this Power Rangers Prime coming out in November, and I'm not sure if that's going to be a sort of like relaunch or a sequel relaunch to MMPR. I'm not entirely sure, but we'll have to wait and see. But like I said, I didn't overall hate the finale for Darkest Hour. I'm just walking away feeling very mixed about it. And who knows, maybe my opinion will change over time. But what do you guys think of the Darkest Hour finale? Tell me in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. And with that said, I'm going to be bringing this video to a close. Thank you to everyone who's subscribed to the channel, who's watched my videos, liked them, and left a comment down below. Your support is greatly appreciated. For everyone who's been following these comic reviews for the past several years, thank you so much as well. I didn't think I'd make it this far in covering the Power Ranger comics and actually talking about the big grand finale for this comic book series. I mean, I started talking about Shattered Grid all those years ago, and I didn't think I'd keep talking about the comics after so many years. But thank you to everyone for all the support. Big special thanks to everyone who's worked on the comics for the past couple of years. You guys are some very, very talented people. And for people who's worked on the comics and reached out and supported the channel, thank you so much as well. That is greatly appreciated as well. But with that said, I think I'm going to bring this video to a close. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out. Take care. Bye.